guys and gals out there. Happy Wednesday to you all. Welcome to the Tip-Off Show, the show that sets the stage for all the most important news, daily fantasy plays, and bets on tonight's 10-game NBA slate. We have a packed show for you today. I am your host, Kayla Knierim. Joining me once again, we've got Eric Lindquist and Chris Spags. Eric always stops dancing right before we go on, but he busted out every time we're in this little pre-show chat.
Guys, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't do that.
Give the people what they want.
Very unprofessional. No, I would never. I would never.
There it is. There it is.
I presume that's how he loosens up, and that's the actor in him where you do those warm-up exercises when you're doing class, and I just tolerate it. It usually gives me the giggles briefly, but today I went to the gym. I've been kind of running around trying to figure out my MLB planning, and now I'm just annoyed by Eric early on, so I'm going to be extra mean today, I've decided.
You're not feeling it. I get it. You're not feeling it. I respect that. No, I just got done going down a 5-hour rabbit hole of MLB. I'm so excited for tomorrow. It's always something that I felt was my best fantasy sport. It's the only sport I never played in real life, which is very, very strange. But you move to Los Angeles, Dodger Stadium, you could get cheap tickets and go and sit out in the outfield. And I feel like I did that almost every day I possibly could for the first couple of years I lived out here. So it's just kind of got a special place in my heart now. And so stoked to get the DFS side of it going tomorrow.
All right. Well, we're going to do a little less donkey talk today, a little more NBA, because like we said, we have a 10-game slate. So don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for countless hours of content covering the NBA, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, and every other sport that's in season. We want to talk about our sponsor, No House Advantage, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code Awesemo to receive a first match deposit bonus of up to $20. Be your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. All right, let's start off with our bad beats. Last night's slate included a lot of game planning around Paul George eventually getting ruled out. How did that situation we discussed yesterday work out for you guys? Spags, we'll start with you.
I felt pretty good about it. I talked about it on the Late Slate Show, did it with Greg. Got the last one coming up today where I think our pal Eric here is going to be joining pretty much all of our cast of characters who've been a part of the Late Slate Show coming back. So make sure to tune into that later on today, 9 p.m. East Coast time, 6 p.m. West Coast time. But it was a weird slate because you really did have to game plan around just having Clippers guys in your lineups, not knowing for sure which ones they would be, and ended up working out pretty well for me. I took some of our guy Eric Lindquist's advice yesterday. I ended up really trying to build it's 40 chess, it feels like to me, for DFS, but I think especially on a short slate, you have to do that a bit more. Today, luckily, we know the injuries more than we did yesterday going into the show, but things changed. Devontae Graham ended up looking up like a better play because Malik Monk ended up getting scratched, and all those Clippers guys ended up being pretty solid again because of no Paul George. So it's definitely a reflection of the modern NBA this season we've had, where you just have to prepare for anything can happen in the late slate, just having that flexibility. But I do think yesterday was one that worked out on my side, so I'm pretty content. No bad beats, only good beats here.
I'm glad you took my advice because I didn't take my advice and it didn't go very well. I don't know. Caleb Martin, Cody Martin, one of them burned me really, really badly. It did not feel good. I didn't even have him in my player pool until you basically got that news. I ended up on Devontae Graham, who I had besmirched yesterday and didn't like at all. But once you get Monk out of there, it becomes another guaranteed 38-minute allotment, basically. And thought that he was going to be playing bigger minutes and had to kind of go in that direction. But along with it came Martin, and that did not go well. Really kind of disappointed in my performance just from a playing the game perspective. So 75% of the games later there, and I decided to lock in half my lineups with a guy who I didn't even really have in my player pool earlier in the day. Kind of a disappointing day, and hoping to get a little redemption here later with hopefully some random Chicago news that might spike.
All right, getting over to our key news, and boy, do we have a lot of it. First up, we've got Donovan Mitchell out tonight for the Jazz in a decent matchup versus Memphis. Spags, who benefits the most for Utah, and will anyone be overowned?
So I think I have some concern that a lot of these guys are going to be overowned, but I do think Jordan Clarkson's the one that I'll be pinpointing the most as a play. That's going to be very chalky wherever you're playing today. But for me, I feel pretty confident in his outlay. Mike Conley's rates for the most part don't change very much without Donovan Mitchell, which is surprising because Mitchell shoots a lot. He also assists a lot. It has been the biggest sample size this year. I think it was only about 280 minutes for Conley, but still for the most part, just didn't see enough from him looking great. Whereas Clarkson, I think, gets up to a 30.6% usage rate, gets a little more assist upside, still a Jordan Clarkson appropriate amount where it's not a lot. Also, other guys, Rudy Gobert takes a bump up in usage too. I think that's noteworthy for him because I think that makes him more playable. But really, the Jazz guys, Joe Ingles, I think still in the mix. The main thing for me would just be not playing 4 or 5 Jazz guys. It's such a big slate that I think that's sort of when you are decreasing the margins of error there, or increasing them really, increasing the margins of error, just trying to get too many Jazz guys in the mix. But Mitchell's a 33% usage rate guy who assists at a high level. And there's a lot of opportunity that opens up against a Memphis team that is decent, but certainly not any world beaters defensively.
Yeah, I'm going kind of the Mike Conley direction a little bit more than Jordan Clarkson. I like both. Don't get me wrong. They're both fantastic spots. Our pal Greg Ehrenberg decides to always talk about historical pricing, and Mike Conley is under 6K on DraftKings. I mean, we haven't seen this number all season. This is the lowest number we've had on him. They've been in so many blowout games here, but this is 5,800 over on DK, the lowest number we've seen this entire basketball season. So I like buying low on him already. I was talking about him a little bit on the slate starter last night. Somebody that I was targeting as a lower owned option before we got the Donovan Mitchell news. And now that we did get that, man, I have to really be committed to that. I feel good about his prospects. I think if this game stays somewhat close, we're going to see more run than the 26, 29, 25 minutes we've seen from him the last 3. Really like going his direction a little bit more than Clarkson. 5,500 for Clarkson, you are shooting dependent. That's a little bit of my concern is always, I want to take a little bit more of the guaranteed floor that I get from Conley. We're getting like negligible ownership differences between the two. But for me, I'm going to side on the part of Conley. And then the rest of these guys, it's just going to be a smattering of them throughout the entire board. I kind of like getting to a couple of these guys throughout. Bogdanovich is a guy that I'm kind of like surprised just that I'm not getting at the moment because he's been really bad of late. But even now, like his profile changes when you take somebody like Donovan Mitchell, who is your primary scorer on this team off the floor. Royce O'Neal doesn't really change a whole lot, but obviously if the game stays closer, there's a better chance for some random stats here and there for him too. So this entire game, I'm probably going to cap it at 3 Utah guys, but I'm going to have 2 or 3 in a lot of lineups.
Andre Drummond is expected to make his Lakers debut tonight against Milwaukee. Eric, is he a playable option after a month or so without game action?
Yeah, 5,200 on FanDuel is pretty jarring to look at for a guy that profiles as well as he does, has the fantasy rates that he does, 1.48 fantasy points per minute on the season. Obviously, this is a completely different situation. There's a lot of unknowns that revolves around it. But right now, we only have him as the 4th highest owned center over on FanDuel, talking about that specifically. I think I'm going to be way over top of the field on that number because if there's any run outside of 24 minutes that he would see, he's going to project as one of the best centers on the entire board. Right now, Alex has him plugged in for 24.25 minutes, which is very similar to what I do too. But any kind of a minutes upside, if he goes out and starts playing well, if you were to get to like 30 minutes, he's a must-have at 5,200. It's a misprice. I wish he was priced into the 6K range because then I could probably be a little bit lighter. And there is a large opportunity cost that exists at center with Robert Williams, Moses Brown, and then Rudy Gobert from that Utah matchup, who I didn't really touch on. But all 3 of them project out great. But 5,200 is a nice number to be getting on this slate.
Yeah, I think on FanDuel and DraftKings there are different plays for Andre Drummond where, as Eric mentioned, that DraftKings price, not so great, but the FanDuel one I think looks pretty good. And I could see getting there even if you are projecting Drummond for, as Awesemo has, as Eric just mentioned, about 24, 25 minutes. I think in that spot, you could play Drummond on FanDuel, but at DraftKings, I think you're forcing it. And I have some concern that people are just going to assume he's going to come in and be Cleveland Andre Drummond or Detroit Andre Drummond, and he's probably going to rebound at a similar clip, but you do have Marcus Gasol there. They haven't bought him out yet. Maybe he gets ruled out. Maybe he does end up inactive today. I think there are some news items here where if Drummond is starting, Gasol isn't starting. I think you could maybe feel more comfortable about that play, though. Probably won't know that news until it gets closer to a lock, probably after lock. But Harrell's still there for them. I feel like there are ways that I really don't think you want to play Drummond and Harrell together. To me, that seems like an awful combination, especially against Milwaukee. So I think Drummond can get there, but on FanDuel, he can get there in 25 minutes. I just would feel comfortable. I wouldn't feel comfortable at all giving him 30 minutes because I think on DraftKings, you sort of have to get to 30 minutes for even feel close to play him. And that to me just seems, it would be very difficult for me to imagine him doing that after not playing for a month and a half too. Big dude, probably not the best condition. Maybe he is, but I think either way, erring on the side of caution on DraftKings seems like the wise move with Andre Drummond.
Kyle Lowry has already been ruled out tonight versus the tanking Thunder. Ugh, I hate that. Spags is Fred VanVleet a must-have after he seemed to be a popular play with Lowry, a game time decision last night.
Yeah, I think this is a really nice spot for Fred VanVleet. I think he's another play that, to me, like Jordan Clarkson, to a lesser extent for me, like Mike Conley, where these are chalk plays where there's a very logical reason to go to them. VanVleet, about a 30% use rate going back to last year in games without Kyle Lowry and Norman Powell. Also, the assist rate takes a jump for him. He's really the one that you can look to as being a play that's going to have a good amount of ceiling and a good amount of floor. And I think those are two things that you definitely want to have against the Thunder team that could be a bit undermanned today, even more than usual. But this spot, to me, Lowry should take an uptick. Siakam should take an uptick. I think Boucher gets a little closer to playable. You could sort of force Gary Trent in, though he hasn't shown the same usage upside as he did in Portland, but those have been in games with Lowry. So there's a lot of ways you can make arguments to go to really a bunch of Raptors here. But to me, going to VanVleet is going to be the crucial play today, especially on FanDuel, but really on both sides. And then Siakam, too, I would put a distant second behind VanVleet, but still, to me, a decent priority play today.
Yep, right there with you. I think it's pretty much impossible just with the amount of minutes that they're playing. Right now, projecting around like 38 minutes. We see a number. I took Powell and Lowry off the floor, and you're seeing those rates get up to 1.18 for Fred VanVleet as opposed to the 1.1 he is on the year on DraftKings. Siakam's rate at 1.07. So, like, with both of them out of there, Gary Trent isn't the usage guy that Norman Powell would have been alongside of them there, too. So I think it only helps to improve their profile in this spot. Gary Trent, you can take some random shots on too. OG Anunoby has been kind of a new dude altogether as well. I think a lot of these Raptors, I mean, it's kind of going to be a very heavy Raptors and Jazz slate in so many ways. And if you find a way to get off of those guys, let me know, because I just don't see it.
Okay, in that same game, Alexei Pokusevski has been ruled out for the Thunder alongside the already out Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Al Horford, Darius Bazley, Lou Dort, and Mike Muscala, as well as a questionable Ty Jerome. Eric, who is actually in play for the Thunder tonight versus Toronto?
I mean, it's just kind of a what's what. I know Svi Mikhailuk doesn't have a very nice place in either Spags or my heart, because if he had played a little bit better, we would have been counting our money and going to Vegas this weekend to watch the Final Four together. But that didn't end up happening. So now we have to play Svi Mikhailuk again and be sad. Kenrich Williams, 17.7% over on DK, like getting to a little bit of him there, 4,400, 4,200. The one thing I will say is that I do expect some value underneath 4K to emerge as the day goes on. And if you really want to stars and scrubs it, looking at some of the Chicago value that could come out down the pipeline, some of these other spots with 20 teams in play, I do expect some guys under 4K, but they project out really, really well on this slate. Isaiah Roby, Moses Brown, happy to go back and get a little bit of a smattering of each of them. It's weird to want to pay 7,100 for a guy like Moses Brown over on DK, but I'm probably going to be doing a little bit of it again today. Over on FanDuel, he's going to be already pretty popular. I don't have to go that direction, but Isaiah Roby is really kind of the talking point there. He's 5K, garnering close to 30% ownership, projecting out for 32 minutes. Like, everything kind of checks there. Power forward, you do have to kind of figure out what you want to do, because you have Siakam, who's just going to be eating up so much of that ownership. And I don't want to get like overly chalky. So maybe I'll go a couple of different routes to other OKC pieces there, get a little bit lower ownership there, because I do like Siakam so much at that position. He's going to lock in a bunch of my ownership there, and I'll get different elsewhere.
Yeah, I think Moses Brown, as Eric mentioned, a pretty solid play today. A play that's probably going to go overlooked because his rising price last game didn't pay off. And I don't think he's definitely not in the situation where earlier this year, or I guess even a couple weeks ago, we were like, hey, Moses Brown, you got to play him when he's under 5K. He's been fantastic playing big minutes, rebound rates crazy. Now he's priced probably around where he should be, 7,100 on DK. He's not a must-have, but to me, you're going against Toronto, a team that can miss some shots. Part of the reason they've been down this year is just their guys been missing a little more shots they're comfortable with. And I think not having Lowry and Norman Powell and going to increase the possibility here of just seeing a lot more bricks, which I think can benefit a guy like Brown, who is an amazing rebounder, really one of the better rebound rates in the league right now at 23%. I think he's the one that I would look at first and foremost, but there's another spot for you for Oklahoma City where if you're getting any of these Thunder guys who are left behind, and including Svi Mikhailuk, whose rates I took a little bit of a cleaver to, knocked him down a little bit from where he was in Detroit, but still to me looks like one of their better value plays on the slate. I think the main thing you have to ask yourself, and it goes in line with what Eric was talking about, this has been something that's been helpful for me the last two slates, basically taking out the value in the early games, just kind of seeing where the chips fall with the late games. And I think that's one decision you're going to have to make, where this Thunder game is going to be at 8 p.m. East Coast time, 5 p.m. West Coast time. So you're going to have a good amount of games left, and you have to decide, hey, do I want to go heavy on Zvi, or do I want to take a shot that Zach LaVine is out, Kobe White is out, and then maybe we see a high usage Satoransky, whatever else may be left behind from the Bulls, just gaining more opportunity. I think it's going to be a question that everybody out there is going to have to ask themselves today. But I would say right now, Svi Mikhailuk, looks appropriately owned. And I think I'll have at least the 21% the field's going to have for him on DK. And I guess same number on FanDuel too. So Svi definitely not overlooked on this slate and could end up being one of the chalk values if we don't get any other very important news.
Those sound like my words, but they're coming from Chris Spags. It's crazy. It's nice to hear. It's nice to hear myself come out of Chris. I don't know. I didn't know I could have that kind of effect on
pause.
you.
I feel like that was a pause.
Pause. Yeah.
For any of you getting a head start on happy hour, Eric's word of the day is smattering, by the way. So whenever you hear it, take a drink. It's moving on from Dobbs.
Wow. Shots fired. Thanks, Kayla. It's all right.
I gotcha. All right. Jaylen Brown is questionable after he missed last game, resulting in one of Jason Tatum's best fantasy games of the year. Spags, do you think Brown plays tonight, and how does his availability affect the Celtics versus Dallas?
So I think it's a really important one. If Brown is in, I don't know the Celtics. I want to get there very much. I do think still, I mentioned it the last time, it didn't end up working out because Fournier missed all his shots and all the Boston fans immediately ran to pillage him and make him feel bad about himself after one game, because that's how New England fans approach things, and got to respect it even if you do completely not respect it. But I feel like in this spot, if Brown is out, I think you can play Jason Tatum with pretty good confidence, even if Fournier does start to make more shots. It did worry me though that Tatum really soaked up everything in that game. Kemba Walker didn't do a lot more. Marcus Smart didn't do a lot more. So my thought, and it's very small sample size ball, this is sort of where you're taking some risk if you read too much into it. But I do think that it's very possible to me that those guys being all in the backcourt, Kemba, Fournier, and Smart, even though, Fournier can be sort of a three, he is still mostly a backcourt guy with how he's treated in the Orlando offense. I think how he's going to be treated in Boston. Even ignoring the low usage rate for Fournier, just those guys chipping away at each other, maybe Tatum getting his own opportunities, the one thing to watch. But I think if Brown is out, Tatum takes a big jump, and then you can sort of take flyers on your Kemba, on your Fournier, on your Marcus Smart. But if Brown is in, I probably wouldn't play much of any of these guys.
Yeah, the last guy you said, Marcus Smart, is kind of my priority, I think. We're just seeing such a big allotment of minutes for him. 5,500 at shooting guard over on FanDuel. You're getting a discount. He's under 6K over on DK. I kind of like going to the guaranteed minutes load that you're going to get with him. I don't expect Fournier to be as garbage as what he was that first game out. What was it? 0 for 10, I believe that he went. It was something brutal, but I think Marcus Smart, just the main allotment of minutes that you're getting from him there, 19.9% usage in that game too, which is kind of surprising, but 38 minutes, like going his direction, gives you a little bit of savings. We can't spend up everywhere, but I kind of like going that direction. For me, Tatum is kind of a tough guy that I would expect to get to. I didn't get to a lot of him last slate, 57.3. This is a larger slate. I'm looking for a lot of those guys, and I'm paying 9K and up. I want 60 point upside, and it's been a while since we've seen that out of him. So I don't know. I understand going that direction. He's kind of the easy plug and play and has been historically there, but I still feel like the upside is a little bit capped, especially when you bring a guy like Fournier in. It's not a direct swap, Jaylen Brown for Evan Fournier, but Evan Fournier can get some usage going there. Played 32 minutes. I'm expecting him to play a little bit better, but that makes it difficult for me to want to pay the 9K for him over on FanDuel. And then 6,300, I guess Evan Fournier is over on DK, and 6,200 on FanDuel. Also going to be tough to get to. They just kind of like cannibalize each other's usage enough that I'm probably not going to want to go there.
Christian Wood has been a late absence in the last two games, but he's probable on today's injury report. John Wall is also questionable. Eric, how do both situations affect things in a road game at Brooklyn?
Kevin Porter. Like just Kevin Porter. So I'm basically plugging this as like, he would be my guy that I would want to get to more than just about anybody at 6K or below. We've seen two big minutes outings from him right out of the gate, 31, 36, 27.6% usage and 21.6% usage alongside Wall. Those numbers are going to skyrocket. And now bringing Christian Wood on the floor isn't something that we've seen too much out of him and Kevin Porter. One game, I believe, but I like going to the direction of both of them. He's just yet another advantageous center play that exists over on FanDuel. If you get that John Wall news, 7,700 for Christian Wood is just a misprice for what we could expect out of him with John Wall off the floor. But Kevin Porter is kind of the guy that I have circled. It's pretty easy for me to go that direction. Sterling Brown, I would be happy to take a couple shots on with the absence of Oladipo and Wall, with Oladipo in Miami now. I'm happy to go that direction, but Kevin Porter, I just have him circled, and I will have an absolute unbelievable amount should John Wall sit.
Yeah, I think that's the right play too. And I'm hoping John Wall goes currently because he's really one thing propping up some of my better DK best ball lineups that I didn't even know when it ended. It's still going on in perpetuity, it seems, but I will be playing DK best ball apparently until the NBA season ends sometime in July. But John Wall, a guy that I think has been really good this year, even though people have been down on Houston, they certainly have shown some downsides. He really, his teammates, I think the one kind of not pulling their weight has been the major downfall of Houston, but Wall assisting at a high level, shooting a lot. The shooting itself hasn't had the best success game to game, but that's what's going to happen when you have a lot of crappy teammates around him. But I do think the team is getting better. Having Olynyk out there seems to show some positive results. Olynyk himself looks great. Having Wood in there, hopefully being healthier after missing a few games, I think bodes well for these guys. So if Wall is in, I think these guys get a little bit closer to unplayable, but if Wall is out, I think that Kevin Porter is going to be a priority play, one of the probably close to a lock play. And if Wood somehow ends up missing today again, I would still play Kelly Olynyk at his price point on DK. He's been fantastic these 2 games. I think people sleeping on him a bit less last time, but with the price up, a big slate, I think people maybe won't get there. So just make sure you're watching the Christian Wood news closely because he's been a guy that has been, I think, expected to play the last 2 games, ended up out. Him being probable on the injury report. Normally you can trust that, but I think just keeping a skeptical eye there, keeping some flexibility in case Olynyk does become an option if Wood is out, I think is going to be an important part of tonight too.
Yeah, Malik Monk was probable the entire day as well. So it does happen. So just, keep your ears open there.
Derrick Rose is questionable for the Knicks tonight in a quality matchup versus Minnesota. Mitchell Robinson will also be back on the sidelines again after foot surgery. Spags, does anyone appeal to you on New York as a result?
I think if Derrick Rose is out, to me, Randall becomes a play that I'm willing to pay for a bit more. And as DK price points being 9,700, I think you can get there when the Knicks are shorthanded. But as it currently looks, I think it's not the best spot if we're going to expect that Rose is in. But Rose being out, I think, doesn't have too much of an impact on another guy who benefits from Mitchell Robinson potentially being not available. And that's Nerlens Noel, who saw big minutes last time out, had one of his better fantasy days recently with the injury situation going on there. You still do have Taj Gibson available to play minutes, playing some more minutes in a few games recently. But to me, Noel, I think, projects as a decent mid-tier play at center. I'm not sure how my lineups are going to work, where I don't know that I want to necessarily be at the 4,900 to 5K range at center unless it's a Kelly Olynyk filling in for Christian Wood. But I do think right now, looking at Noel, he looks like a play to me that I wouldn't mind getting to, assuming that we don't get some more value opening up, or one of these other plays where higher dollar at center end up being a meaningful part of how I'm optimizing on Fantasy Cruncher today.
Eric?
So it's my turn.
Eric taking a brief mental nap.
No, it's okay. I was just literally going through Nerlens Noel because I was shocked that he played as well as what he did last game. And I was going through that log and I pulled up popcornmachine.net. Yeah, he actually played pretty darn well. I hadn't even remotely considered him on this slate. I understand Derrick Rose out. The problem with Derrick Rose is that doesn't really affect anybody but Julius Randle for me. Obviously, this is a Minnesota matchup we do want to take advantage of and that we've been kind of targeting this entire year. So I like going to the Julius Randle route of it. We'll see. Not that he can get more usage or more minutes by any means, but I think the opportunity is more guaranteed and locked in that event. But Nerlens Noel, sorry about the seizure, guys, my bad. But Nerlens Noel, yeah, go ahead and play a little bit of him, I guess. I don't know. Chris is way sharper than me, and I hadn't even thought about playing him on this slate until it showed up on the run sheet. So there we go.
All right. Zach LaVine and Kobe White are currently questionable for a road game at Phoenix. If either or both are out, does anyone look more interesting versus Phoenix? Typically tough defense, Eric.
Yeah, so we saw Phoenix get shredded yesterday. They're on a back-to-back. So I want to let it be known that they are gettable in this spot. I think they're even more gettable just because, again, they played yesterday. Chicago had a day of rest. So there's that. My guy that I have centered here, and I had him centered, I think when we did the late slate show the other night, was Patrick Williams. I think at FanDuel, where his price is $3,600, he's already somebody that I'm getting to a lot, and I will have just an unbelievable amount. I think Kevin Porter, if Wall is out, and him would probably be near lock button guys for me in this situation. If you were to get news before lock that you're going to get somebody out to the stature of Zach LaVine in this spot, and Kobe White as well, that kind of builds up the floor for Thomas Satoransky. Ryan Arcidiacono, who you spoke into existence the other night, and I hate you for it, 3K, sitting down there at the bottom end, actually got some run, would actually have to play again. I only played 15 minutes here, but if you take LaVine and Kobe White off the floor, who else is going to be playing minutes there at the point in the two? I mean, it's Satoransky. It's a little bit of Javonte Green, if you want to take that dart at 3K. There's just a lot of low pieces there. Troy Brown is a little bit interesting at 3K. There's just so many guys there at the floor that I would have so much interest in if we got that news before lock. Just kind of mix and matching. making sure that I had maybe an abundance of one as opposed to the other. I could swap it based on what that starting lineup is, because they all are right at 3K on DraftKings. Makes it super easy to plug and play the starters, or, if there's somebody that we kind of are projecting that pops with Alex, that you can kind of plug and play in that direction. But Nikola Vucevic, it's hard for me to get there on a center slate that's stacked in the mid-range over here on DK. On FanDuel, it's weird because I know 8,800, I was super excited about getting to him yesterday. And you take Levine off the floor, who else is going to score the ball for this team? Like, you would think it would have to be Vooch, but God, there's so many good plays in that 5 and 6K range on FanDuel that I would still have a tough time getting there on this slate.
I think Vooch to me would immediately jump in appeal. And I think one thing that I would point out that gives me some vague concern, but one of Vooch's worst games in that Orlando stretch where they had nobody was against Phoenix, where they completely clamped him down and didn't allow the crappy guys in Orlando around him to do a lot. The Chicago Bulls team is a little better though, so I'm going to kind of put that in the back burner, but I just wanted to mention that because it does stick in my craw when I was thinking through this game today. But I think if Levine is out, Vooch becomes more of a priority play to me. I think would be playable at his price point, though. I think, as Eric mentioned on FanDuel, there are some ways you're going to be building lineups that are probably not going to necessarily align with having Vooch, but on DraftKings, I think it looks like a solid play. I do think Satoransky's minutes get a lot more secure as opportunity as well. I think he's a guy that would become, to me, potentially a guy I would put in as a placeholder now in the hopes of trying to capture the Chicago news, because he projects close to usable to me right now. And I think obviously if you get Levine or White out, the minutes increase and the opportunity for Satoransky goes up. So that's one way I'm considering building here in the 4D chess model of DFS that you now have to apply that I talked about earlier. But I think the one guy that Eric mentioned that I'm glad he mentioned him, but I think to me, he's the one who could gain a lot. And it's not going to be perfect because you do have Vooch out there, you do have Lowry Markkanen, but I do think Troy Brown has been a guy that since he's been a part of the Bulls, he's playing that backup Levine role. And, Levine plays a ton of minutes. So right now that hasn't meant much. But when the Bulls got blown out the other day, Troy Brown came in and basically played poor man Zach LaVine, which ended up with him assisting a bit more, not quite chucking. But I do think Troy Brown has shown the ability to have a ceiling. And I think Chicago is viewing him as a guy that if he's out, he's going to be our very poor man Zach LaVine. And it wouldn't shock me if he got a start or at least earn more run coming in the second unit. So Troy Brown, a minimum salary, would be one that I would put a pin in right now. But I think Satoransky's a guy that I think it's not crazy to put him into lineups now in the hopes that you just get one of Levine or White out and Satoransky then immediately becomes a better play.
Just to piggyback 1 second there. So Troy Brown has basically only played garbage time the last 2 games. Yep. But if I saw him starting, he becomes like automatically the guy that I would want to swap everything to. He would have to be starting. I would prioritize him over Archie Diacono. I would prioritize Archie Diacono if he's not starting. Otherwise, Troy Brown, if he's in that starting lineup, just becomes the best play of the grouping.
Rodney Magruder is out and Wayne Ellington is doubtful after we just saw big opportunity for Hamidou Diallo and Saben Lee last game. Spags, does either look appealing for Detroit versus Portland?
So Saben Lee was a guy I kind of moved away from last slate because of concern about the minutes. Corey Joseph still played a good amount of run there, and those guys did not play any minutes together until the closing group. So that's worth pointing out too, that these guys are definitely going to be directly pulling on each other. And it's also possible that you see a bit less minutes for both Saben Lee and Corey Joseph, because there is a chance too that only one of them ends up closing this game if Detroit's competitive and they like the way that things are looking. But I do think Saben Lee is the one that I'd still be willing to get to today. And I have some concern. I think the ownership right now doesn't look too bad for him at 12% on DK, barely a factor on FanDuel, but I do think on FanDuel, he's not quite as good of a play. He's only going to be 2% owned on there. But on DraftKings, I think if Saben Lee ends up staying around 12%, he's a value play I'm willing to get to, because I think you're going to get at least 24 minutes from him, definitely 20 to 24. And I think the 20 part is a bit of a concern, but if he gets closer to 28 somehow, I don't know how that would be if Corey Joseph is going to be really meaningfully siphoning minutes away. I think you can make Saben Lee, though, feel like a better play just because he's not going to have the entire field on him like it looked like he would have the other night. So I'm still probably not going to get a ton of Saben Lee up top just because it's an early game. And I do want to keep that roster flexibility for the value that could open up later in the day. But I think Lee right now, he looks like a fine play. And I think maybe a bit safer than people will think in terms of a floor. The ceiling, though, you still kind of have to have some things break your way, like less Corey Joseph minutes, or just Saben Lee shooting unbelievably well and spiking an upside that hasn't really been there game to game.
Yeah, he's also got Hamidou Diallo and Corey Joseph actually had a higher usage rate than what I was expecting in that game, given they ended up blowing out Toronto, which is a weird thing to say out loud, but 22.2% usage for Corey Joseph in that outing. Saban Lee only got up to 26 minutes, made full, he just took advantage of that. I mean, 29.1% usage. So Saban Lee definitely is going to be the guy who projects it out the best out of everybody for me, but you're also seeing the ownership get there in a meaningful way. I think Hamidou Diallo is a little bit higher on right now, and I think Alex is lighter on him than I am. Lighter on Saban, on Hamidou Diallo. He's got him at around 18% right now. I think that that's a little bit high. I think that that'll probably come down as the day goes on with more value emerging. 4,600 sitting there as well. Saban Lee 4,300 feels like the most guaranteed guy for sure. But yeah, Corey Joseph, hard to really want to play on this kind of a slate at 4K. It'd be different if he was a little bit cheaper, but we could have a lot of 3K plays to be looking at. So I'm right there with you where I don't want to lock in that roster spot too early.
All right. And our final key news, Grayson Allen is questionable for Memphis in the aforementioned game versus the Jazz, while Justice Winslow has been ruled out. Desmond Bane started the second half last game with Allen injured. Eric, does he or anyone else meaningfully benefit from the potential absences?
I think it's really just kind of Ja Morant on FanDuel. And that's about the only play from this entire team that I have a lot of interest in. I know Utah, without Donovan Mitchell out there, maybe it could profile as a closer game, that we could be looking at a situation where, D'Anthony Melton or some of these other pieces along with Bane. But I really think the 6,800 on Ja Morant, who we know the kind of player that he is from last year, has been a little up and down this season. We've seen some big games, even 3 games ago against Utah, where he put a 52.3 on FanDuel. That's good to see. But everybody's kind of priced appropriately still, even with that absence. Grayson Allen isn't like the craziest usage dude, had a 6% usage against Houston, 16% against Utah in the game previously. So not somebody who really hoards the ball as it is. So I'm not getting to a lot of them. I don't think I will get to a lot of them in that event that he were to end up sitting, but maybe I'm wrong about that. If there's anybody else that you have targeted, Spags, let me know. But Ja Morant, 6,800 on FanDuel, that's all I got.
Yeah, I think I don't mind the idea of playing Bane. He's not a great value play, though, but if he's going to be completely unowned and I think still getting starter minutes, he's not a guy I would mind taking a flyer on. But the one who jumps out to me the most is D'Anthony Melton. And he happened to have a nice game last time out with Grayson Allen going out. I don't know if that you could say that's correlated, because to me, the guy that pulls the most from D'Anthony Melton historically has been Kyle Anderson. When Anderson's been seeing less minutes or he's been out, we've seen more minutes for Melton, and vice versa for Anderson when Melton's been out or unavailable or ineffective, whatever the case may be. But this spot for Melton, I just like him whenever he's going to be lower owned and going to be mostly overlooked. And at 4K on DraftKings, he is a value play that to me projects for about 22 fantasy points right now. I think if you get Grayson Allen out of there, he's probably to come up a bit higher. And I think that's sort of the play that I don't mind, because I just don't think people are going to care too much on this slate. Even putting it into our run sheet for today, talking about Memphis, it's like, yeah, we're talking about Grayson Allen. It's a 45-minute show. But I think for the most part, Grayson Allen being out does open up something here. And I think for me, it's probably Melton that would be the one that I'm interested in right now. But I think he gets a lot more interesting if Allen ends up out.
All right, everybody, MLB opening day is tomorrow, April 1st, and we have a deal for you. Get your first 9 days of Awesemo Plus MLB for just $9 when you use promo code STARTING9. That's starting with the numeral 9. This gives you access to everything we have to offer for MLB DFS, including player projections, ownership projections, top stacks, lineup builder, and our premium Slack channel. This offer is valid through April 9th. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus MLB today. Gotta love a 45-minute show. We have 6 segments to pack into 10 minutes. Here we go. Our one-on-one in these battles between stars. Which player would you rather have in NBA DFS or prop bets tonight? First up, we've got Luka Doncic will face a Boston team who could be without one of their better defenders in Jaylen Brown. James Harden faces his former team, Houston, at home with a depleted roster. Eric, which superstar wins this one-on-one, Luka or Harden?
There's no way that I'm not jamming in James Harden over Luka Doncic against Houston. Moving on. Continue on. I'll save time. There we go.
Yeah,
perfect.
I'll also go soundbite sized here. I do prefer Harden today. I think Luka's still a fine play. I think I'll probably get some amounts of both, and it's probably going to depend on the ownership. But both guys are in really good spots, and I would agree Harden to me looks like the better play overall. But Luka's still in the mix, and I think if we get more value opening up, wouldn't shock me to see some Luka and Harden lineups for myself. So both guys in play, but I think the favorite has to go to Harden.
All right. Damian Lillard has been solid this year, but is seemingly yielding more and more opportunity to CJ McCollum and Yusuf Nurkic. Jeremy Grant faces him tonight and also has seen some decreases in production with Detroit's lineup fleshing out more. Who looks better in this one-on-one, Lillard or Grant? Spags?
Well, now, honestly, because we're shorter in time, I just wish I didn't include this one at all. But it's honestly a very crappy one-on-one, two guys who you probably shouldn't be playing today. And when you're trying to flesh out a full hour or even a 45-minute show where things are slow, maybe you can debate this more. But I think play neither guy would be the move. And if you somehow land on Lillard salary-wise, it's probably a good move. But just worth pointing out, Jeremy Grant's been terrible recently. And I think that's not a great sign for him that he's just going to be shooting less because he hasn't been rebounding well, hasn't been assisting well. But really, for the most part, don't play either guy in the one-on-one, but favor Lillard if you have to.
Yeah, there's 14 guys mowing the same lawn out back here by me. So I'm going to just turn my mic off here for a second as they pass on through. And yeah, don't play either guy. That seems like a great idea.
I thought you were doing another analogy. I was like, wow, I've never heard that one.
No, it's just what's happening. Even though it's concrete outside of my apartment, there's, for some reason, the need to do this little tiny strip of grass with 14 lawnmowers. That's what it sounds like.
Fantastic. Jordan Clarkson will be a top-owned play thanks to Donovan Mitchell's absence. Fred VanVleet will also see his ownership skyrocket thanks to Kyle Lowry being ruled out, which injury-enhanced DFS play wins in this one-on-one. Clarkson or VanVleet, Spags?
For me, it's VanVleet here. I like Clarkson a lot. I think both guys to me are going to be core pieces of what I'm doing today, even though, as Eric mentioned earlier, you could probably look at Conley as a pivot to Clarkson, who's going to be very highly owned, but I like the spot for both guys. VanVleet, though, the arguments are really strong for him. He's going to be 30% usage, 30% assist rate guy in court time without Lowry. I think the opportunity is just as good as it was previously with Gary Trent there. A guy is going to ball handle even less than Norman Powell did. So VanVleet, I think, is a 100% play on all the sites. And that's even accounting whatever news we're going to get. I would say just play VanVleet anywhere you can.
Yep. And Clarkson, again, it's not besmirching him. It's not saying that he's bad, but I really do like going to the direction of Fred VanVleet, just as kind of the priority for sure. Just about everywhere, not priced appropriately for this situation. By any means, Clarkson is still shooting dependent. I talked about that a little bit earlier. So I do like just siding with him as the security blanket.
Wonderful. Let's head over to No House Advantage, prop or not. Here are some of No House Advantage's props of the day for key players. Guys, do you like the over or under on them? And how many points would you assign? Let's start off with, again, Fred VanVleet, over under 27.5 points plus assists. Eric?
Yeah, we're going to go over on just about everything that has to do with any Toronto Raptor in this spot. If you go through the No House Advantage, the library that we have between the premium lineups that you can just basically copy, paste, and enter, or if you go over to see kind of just where the projections are, every single Toronto Raptor is just going to jump and leap off the page. We have OG, Gary Trent, all these guys. Fred VanVleet is among them. Take the over.
Yeah, VanVleet to me, same logic as the DFS side of things. This would be a 10 or a 9 pointer to me on No House Advantage today. I just think it's an easy over here. I've projected for 33.8 points plus assists. I think the Awesemo numbers are also going to be reflecting a little more of a boost as well. So VanVleet to me, just playing guys here who the line was set for the situation they're not in. We talk about it every show, but I just got to beat it home again because it's important on No House Advantage. This line was set assuming Lowry was going to be in. He's not in. It's a completely different situation. It's a much better situation for VanVleet. So that should be a core play today on No House Advantage.
CJ McCollum, over under 3.5 3-pointers made. Spags?
I think this is one of the better bets on the board today, according to Awesemo. I might be misquoting that because I now lost the screen in front of me, but
it's a middle of the road for sure.
Okay, so maybe
it's a 5 or a 6 pointer.
Yeah. Time flies when you're having fun.
There it is.
I would say that CJ McCollum, for the most part, I don't feel crazy about, but I do think going against Detroit, a team who really doesn't defend too well, adding the guys in that they have added, I don't think makes them much better defensively. Giving up 37.7% shooting from deep on the year. That's a nice number for them. More attempts as well from the corners. I think those things bode well for a guy like McCollum, who probably is going to have the same upside he had in that one Miami game every night, but 3-pointer wise, he's just going to keep shooting more and more and shooting better, I think, as he returns from his injury status there. So for me, McCollum, I would take the over there, even though apparently not as good of a play as I was remembering from earlier in the day.
Well, we're also seeing him play big minutes, and he's basically inserted in and getting around the same usage he had before, high 20s. We're looking at a guy that is going to have the opportunity to be able to do whatever he wants, and he knocks down the three at a pretty high rate. So I do like the over here as well.
Jason Tatum, over under 25.5 points. Eric?
So this spoke a little bit to me being a little bearish on Jason Tatum, but it's definitely the under for me here. I like getting on the under of him here. It's not a perfect 1-for-1 with Evan Fournier being inserted for Jaylen Brown, but that's kind of the situation it is. If Jaylen Brown goes especially, this would be a definite under for me. I think it profiles even a little bit better in that direction.
Yeah, I think right now it's an under. If Jaylen Brown is out, it becomes an over. And those are the plays that I like a no house advantage where, again, the line being reflecting one situation that's not currently the one that you're facing, but also the fact that it's currently up in the air. If Brown plays, it's going to look worse for Tatum. If Brown doesn't play, Tatum looks better. And I think right now this line is reflecting the fact that as Brown is going to be potentially in today. And if he's out, it's just not an efficient line for Tatum. So I would take the over if you get the news that Brown is out. And I would actually prioritize that as one of my better plays, a no house advantage, maybe an 8-pointer. And I think if Brown is in, then just take the under here and maybe prioritize that more in the middle of the pack, 4 or 5-pointer.
And the top prop on the board, according to Awesemo, is Tyler Hero's points plus rebounds plus assists prop with a 98.4% chance of hitting the under of 29.5. Would this be your 10-pointer on no house advantage, Spags?
Yeah, I think that's one. That and Van Vliet are two of my favorites, but I think this is one too where the Van Vliet one's very obvious overall, but this Tyler Hero one, I honestly don't get what the line is. Like, were they expecting Dragic and Butler and Robinson to be out? I honestly don't get what it is. Maybe Nunn being out increases Tyler Hero's share a bit more. Nunn is Kendrick Nunn's questionable for them right now, but to me, I think this is right there with the Van Vliet prop as being one of the ones I would put up pretty highly on my no house advantage lineup.
Yeah, exactly. And Victor Oladipo is still going to be sidelined here, but I don't really care. It's still not going to be enough opportunity for him. Playing low mid 30s minutes, he can get there in different ways, but against Indiana in this place, I'm not really seeing it either. It feels like a pretty easy under.
Moving over to our DFS hedge quickly, how can you hedge a daily fantasy lineups with a bet like taking the over on a prop for a player you're fading tonight, Eric?
I'm not really going to be doing that again tonight, which is strange because I have been talking a lot about how I do like to try to find something in the market. But right now, because of how bullish I am on Utah, on Toronto, I think I would be looking at getting on top of those props on NHA and in the prop market. Obviously, they've adjusted a little bit so far, but I still like the over for Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam on points. If you go to OddsShopper and you just rank it based off of win percentage, they're definitely guys that are still going to pop today.
I think for me, the one hedge that I could make based upon the idea that I'm currently thinking of trying to keep some value room or some room for the value that could potentially open up for Chicago is just betting on Phoenix right now and taking this line at a lower number. That's probably going to be when we get news. If we were to get news that a Zach LaVine were out, Kobe White probably isn't affecting too much, but Phoenix favored by 7. I feel like taking that spread is maybe one way if I end up going with a build that does rely on the idea of a Satoransky or especially a Troy Brown. It was a shit play right now that would only be good if we do get a lot of guys out for Chicago.
We've got 3 segments in 2 minutes. Here we go. Heading over to Good Dog, Bad Dog. Love it. Spags, give us your good dog and bad dog.
My good dog, well, my bad dog I'll get first because that's the one that jumps to mind. I think Oklahoma City is still a bad dog and an 8-point underdog at home. I just think Toronto is going to figure it out here. I think could be some improvement by consolidation here of having Van Vliet do more. And Lowry's a great player, but still just having one guy be the primary ball handler and one of the lead scorers I think is going to be important there. And I guess for a good dog, I'm intrigued by Minnesota at home. I feel like they've shown some signs of life recently. New York does play slow, but it is a Tibbs revenge matchup for whatever that means for Minnesota. But I think Minnesota's been surprising me with how competent they've looked recently. And I think that could continue tonight against the Knicks as a 3-point home dog.
Good dog for me, Sacramento. I like them against San Antonio tonight. 2.5, depending on which book you're looking at. I do like getting on top of that. I like being on the Sacramento side, who have been playing pretty darn good basketball. That lineup has been a little consolidated with the absence of Bagley, the departure of Bielitsa. I kind of like what they're doing right now. And then my bad dog comes courtesy of one Jordan Klein, so you can blame him and not me. But I definitely like going to the Portland Trailblazers side of it. Sitting at 8 right now. Detroit definitely a bad dog.
All right, and really quickly, Eric, give us your make or break and fade of the day.
Oh, I mean, make or break for me is Mike Conley. I have a crazy amount of him there. I think if Kevin Porter Jr. were to emerge with John Wall out he would become probably my highest owned play of the slate. And then also I'm going to throw Patrick Williams in there, who is kind of like my guy who's not as owned on both sites as what I think he should be. And if you were to have the news break your way, LaVine, if that happens after lock, you could be sitting on the nuts.
My make or break is definitely Van Vliet. As I mentioned earlier, I just view him as a 100% play today, and I don't think that's going to change for me, regardless of whatever happens over the next hour and change or 2 hours with Live Before Lock and the deeper dive. And I feel like for fade of the day, I'm kind of thinking it's Mike Conley, but the price is still too good because I do think I'm a little bit heavier on Jordan Clarkson. I don't know that I feel the strongest about that. I'm just going through the top owned plays and seeing if there's anybody. It honestly might be Svi or Kenrich Williams, two guys who are now projected for over 20%, and they're both in fine spots. But value wise, I talked earlier in the show, I've just been getting good results not playing the chalk value and just being willing to settle and figure out what value I'm going to play in the late games. And that could be a spot today that occurs with Svi and also Kenrich Williams getting ownership a bit earlier in the slate.
Yeah, make your fade of the day my make or break guy. Way to go. Thanks for that. Go teamwork. Ready, break. We're leaving.
Fives.
Get out of here.
All right. Well done, you guys. Thank you so much to Eric and Spags. Thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. The Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock are up next. I'm Kayla Knierim. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Whenever you're ready, Jordan. Eric definitely did say you'll find yourself sitting on the nuts, and I thought it was a strange way to phrase that. Nobody wants to sit on their nuts.
What?
Well, I think we need to talk about sitting on our nuts more before we go on.
Yeah. Wondering if you were high-fiving me or giving me a countdown. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive, presented by none other than SuperDraft. I'm Dave Loughran. Catch me on the Twitters at Laffy_D, LOUGHY_D. Joined as always by Adam Scherer at ShipMyMoney DFS and Alex Baker joining us on this wonderful 10-game slate on a Wednesday to close out the month of March. He's at Awesemo DFS on Twitter. Boys, Adam, go to you first. What's cracking, brother?
Not much. Pretty crazy slate, but it'll be nice to do it with three people. Get Alex's take on some stuff as well.
What's up, Alex? How you feeling today?
Good, man. It's been a while since we've done a three-way here, so this will be a lot of fun.
All right. Well, let's jump into it. We got 10 games, about an hour and 10 minutes to power through these. Then, as we always do, we'll turn it over to the Live Before Lock crew. Coming up right after us, it's Josh Engleman and Greg Ehrenberg. So that means you got to do your job and hit that thumbs up right now. Just soar us past any number that Josh can, for any reason, try to pretend that he took any small part. And I know some of you guys might not be the biggest fan of me, so you say I'm going to wait till Josh and give him the thumbs up, that's fine. But I know there's plenty of Laffy backers and Adam and Alex backers out there that are looking to knock this number up past 500 relatively quickly. So let's get on that. And of course, subscribe. I've said before, only about 50% of people that watch the shows are actually subscribed. So let's change that. Subscribe, join the community. And if you want, join the Awesemo's YouTube channel as a member and get those awesome badges, and also use emojis of Alex, myself, Ben, and more of Adam and Josh and everything to come. It's pretty fun.
There's also plenty of Josh haters. This really shouldn't be hard.
What'd you say?
There's also plenty of Josh haters. This really shouldn't be hard.
I was thinking the same thing. Like, there's undoubtedly plenty of people that just watch Josh just to say mean things to him in chat. So I feel like we can get this up there pretty quickly. Anyway, let's dive into it. We'll start with you, Alex. Portland and Detroit, since you are our honorary. What are you cueing? You cueing the music? You taking us out already? Oh, that's not me. That's not you. Okay. Portland and Detroit. Blazers 7.5-point favorites against the Pistons. 221 total. Portland Trailblazers are pretty much healthy at this point, Alex, but that also is going to lead to ownership being down pretty significantly. You're just not seeing anyone from Portland getting a lot of love today. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with CJ McCollum back to full strength, that's going to take away from some of the other guys. And then you have Norman Powell, who also is going to be a big producer on the team. So I think it's going to take a little while for these salaries to account for those guys.
All right. What about you, Alex or Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense that they're not getting much ownership. I do think that you can take shots on particularly McCollum, but also Dame in tournaments. Like they still have such high ceilings. McCollum in particular has been really good this year. I do think that you see the usage come down a little bit now that Powell's replaced Gary Trent and Nurkic is back in the lineup. But he's still been about a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy with Lillard this year. Lillard's at about 1.3 fantasy points per minute. Neither one, stands out as a top play at their salary since the team is healthy. But I think that the salary on Dame has come down enough where I am still interested in tournaments, and McCollum has, been able to pay off that price tag all season long.
Josh says, thanks for turning the chat on me out of the gate. So it's a bunch. Anyway, apparently Josh is reading chat. So welcome, partner. Okay. So is there anything that you would consider not even a priority, but even a quality tournament option from Portland today, Adam?
Yeah, McCollum and Lillard, I think, are fine in tournaments. They're still going to be the focal points of this offense. They're still both obviously really good. McCollum's salary is, never really got that expensive. Lillard's has come down. So definitely not priorities. Also, one thing working against them is that this is one of the 2 7:00 games. So obviously, if you end up with them in your lineup, those are, fewer roster spots that you have as news comes out throughout the night.
Do you have anything else on Portland, Alex?
Yeah, I agree with Adam's point on those 7 p.m. games being a little bit less advantageous because you can't late swap. Been seeing that the previous few nights. So what I've been doing is kind of bumping up some of the projections for the later guys in the slate. So I just have more of those guys in my lineups.
All right. So then let's go to Detroit. I'll stick with you for a minute, Alex. You've got Dennis Smith Jr. out, Wayne Ellington questionable. We saw the other day that our boy Saban Lee was actually a pretty popular option. Not going to see as much today in that respect. I think overall, as it stands right now, Detroit's looking at Jeremy Grant at least being your highest owned player on DraftKings. Where do you stand on them on both sites here as we pull not a lot on DraftKings, but FanDuel, a decent amount of ownership going to the likes of Grant and Sadiq Bey?
I think Saban Lee is still a decent option. He's been getting the start at point guard with Dennis Smith Jr. out. And he's a pretty exciting player as far as getting assists and his usage, but he's very mistake prone. So we saw him get benched the entire second half a few games ago. So that's always a concern. The main guy I'm looking at here is Hamidou Diallo. He had that groin injury, so he didn't play for the Pistons for the first couple weeks. But in this last game, he played a lot of minutes. So I'm thinking he might be in line to get the start now that some of these guys are out, like Wayne Ellington and Rodney Magruder. If he does, I feel like he could have some success here.
Okay. Adam, the Detroit Pistons, again, Jeremy Grant was, looking like a lock as your most improved player of the year. He's kind of settled down a little bit lately, but I would assume that all of us kind of anticipated that happening. Is he worth the price point today against the Portland team that's ranked dead last in defense over the last month?
Yeah, I think he's fine. He's particularly cheap on FanDuel, but a decent option on DraftKings as well. One concern I do have is that he's only averaged about 31 minutes per game over the last month, which to some extent I think can be attributed to blowouts. But also, we've talked about it a lot that the Pistons don't care about winning games at this point. So you might just see a lot fewer of those 37, 38-minute Jeremy Grant games. But I agree with Alex. I really like Amadou Diallo here. He played about 27 minutes last game. You have Magruder still out. You have Dennis Smith Jr. out. You have Wayne Ellington doubtful. Ellington got the start and played about 20 minutes last game. You could see Diallo start here, but even if he comes off the bench, I think he plays close to 30 minutes. Josh Jackson didn't play at all last game. So Diallo was a very productive player on Oklahoma City, especially when he wasn't out there with high usage guys. You don't really have high usage guys, especially high usage ball handlers on Detroit. So I think Diallo looks really good. I think Saban Lee, especially on DraftKings at 4,300, still looks like a good value. I would expect you're getting 26 to 28 minutes and around the fantasy point per minute from him. Sadiq Bey is really cheap on FanDuel. So I would say Diallo and Lee are my priorities, but I don't have an issue with Bey or with Grant either.
All right, let's talk about Miami then. Going up against the Indiana Pacers here. Miami Heat 1-point favorites on the road, 218.5 total. Alex, what are you doing with the Miami Heat?
So now we got non-Dragic and Hero all active for the first game in a while. So that's kind of mitigating a lot of interest in the guards for the Heat. So I'm kind of looking at Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. There really aren't any injuries that are making them stand out, and the matchup versus Indiana is pretty neutral. So all in all, I'm pretty lukewarm on the Heat.
What about you, Alex, or Adam? Sorry, Jimmy Butler in play for you?
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit higher on Butler and Bam here just because I think the pricing looks good. It's come down a little bit. Small forward, not the strongest position tonight. And even in games where Miami's been healthy with Bam and with Dragic, Butler's averaged nearly 1.3 DraftKings points per minute this year. You're expecting 34, 35 minutes here. And over the last month, Indiana's bottom 10 in defensive rating, top 10 in pace. So it's been a pretty good matchup recently. And then Bam is pretty cheap as well. I don't think the center position is super strong tonight. Like there's a lot of mid-range guys that have high ceilings, but I feel more confident in Bam's playing time and his production than a lot of the guys that are, like $1,000 to $1,500 cheaper. One other thing I think that could work in Adebayo's favor here, as far as playing time goes, is that I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Miami basically match his minutes with Domantas Sabonis, and Sabonis averages a couple minutes more per game than Adebayo does. So it wouldn't be surprising to me if this was a game where instead of getting 34 or 35 minutes, you got like 36 or 37 from Bam.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, Alex, you look at it right now, and from an ownership standpoint, which you can get at awesemo.com, go to awesemo.com/join. Outside of Jimmy Butler, there's really nobody getting ownership since the last update. I mean, you're talking about less than 2% on everyone not named Jimmy Butler on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, Bam's coming in around 4%, but outside of him and Jimmy Butler, there's just no ownership going to the rest of this team whatsoever. So I guess it seems like you guys feel pretty similarly to what we're seeing reflected in the ownership.
Yeah, I think whenever you have a low-owned guy like Butler or Bam Adebayo, you can kind of sprinkle them in. It does require like a little bit of a line of construction around them where you have some of the better values, but these guys can certainly win you a tournament tonight.
Okay. Adam, the Indiana Pacers, this game just kind of feels mostly ugly on all fronts, but maybe you've got something unique that we can hit on today that hasn't really been touched on at all. Anything from the Pacers jumping out at you?
No, nothing from Indiana jumps out. I mean, you do have McDermott questionable, you have Lamb questionable, but even if they're out, I'm not really sure that's going to open up much from a fantasy standpoint. Miami's been the slowest team in the league over the last month. They're a strong defensive team as well. There's nothing that looks really good. I mean, like, obviously you can make a case for Sabonis or Brogdon on any slate, but there's so many good plays on this slate that I don't really see myself getting to either one. I'm a lot more interested in going to Butler and Bam than I am going to the Indiana side.
Alex, anything from the Pacers?
I think ever since Karis LeVert has joined their team, it's a little bit lower production than we've seen earlier. So I'm not seeing a ton of interest in Brogdon. Sabonis is a great player, but the price of 9,400 is a little bit tougher to get to tonight. And the matchup versus the Heat isn't that great either. So On FanDuel, I noticed these guys are a little bit cheaper. So I'm looking at Brogdon at 6,600, Turner at 6K, and Holiday, Justin at 3.8K. So some decent values on FanDuel.
All right, Adam, let me go to you here. It started off with Dallas and Boston. The Dallas Mavericks 1-point dogs opened as 1-point favorites. So this game really just going back and forth here, 222 total. We'll get to the Jaylen Brown news in a moment once we hit on the Celtics. But as far as Dallas goes, completely healthy outside of a few guys that don't really matter all that much, right? JJ Redick, Willie Cauley-Stein. We don't need to dive into any of that. Plus, a bunch of them have been out for a while now. The big question is, how does Luka Doncic compare to guys like James Harden for you and a couple other top-priced guys? And I know, just to tease this a little bit and get your opinion now, in your deep dive article, which is free every day of the week at Awesemo.com, you were adamant that James Harden is still your guy over Luka Doncic, even though he's playing alongside Kyrie Irving tonight.
Yeah, I think that Harden is still, the higher projected guy. I think that he's the preferable option here, and we'll talk about Harden more obviously when we get to that game. But I do think that it is a spot to pay attention to ownership. Like right now on DraftKings, we have 24% ownership going to Harden, only about 10% going to Luka. That's, a spot where it's certainly not a spot where you like have to pivot or anything. Like Harden's still, I think, a winning play, but you certainly can, if you have a chalkier lineup, go with Luka over Harden if you're getting like a 2.5 to 1 discount, because it is a similar range of outcomes. His median projection is just a little bit lower. One thing that's nice on DraftKings too, though, and I think makes him a little bit easier to get to than FanDuel, there's a lot of really good guard value on this slate. On DraftKings, though, you can roster Luka at small forward. So I think that's one way that, like, if you were to decide that you wanted to play Luka instead of Harden, play him at small forward, use an extra one of the value guards. That's one way I think that you can kind of use positional eligibility on DraftKings to maybe surpass those Harden lineups, even if Harden does beat Luka by a couple of points.
Okay. Alex, if we're looking at the Mavericks, does anything jump out to you here? Luka Doncic, where does he rank among the rest of the top tier options?
I think Luka is in play, but not anything to get too excited about tonight. Boston's always one of my least favorite teams to pick players against because they don't play at a great pace, and we see that with Dallas projected for 111 points today. So I think Luka probably is worse than your average night, and the price of 10.7K on DraftKings, 10.5K on FanDuel is about as high as you see. So I guess I'm a little bit under on Luka tonight, especially given that these 3K guys tonight are not available at all. So getting to the top end is a little bit harder than your average night.
What are you doing on the other side with the Jaylen Brown questionable news and Tristan Thompson being out still?
So we got the news right before we got on that Jaylen Brown is in tonight. So it appears we got everything we need for the Celtics. With Evan Fournier in the rotation now, I expect them to have a little bit of a shorter rotation with better overall players, as well as Kemba also being in for this game. So I don't think we've seen a game yet with all four of them playing. So that's making me not super interested in any of the main Boston guys, except for Robert Williams. Robert Williams has gotten huge minutes. He did again the last game. He just didn't get the production to go with it. That's kind of not to be unexpected because he is a high volatility player with how many stocks he gets. So I'm not afraid to go back to him today and hope that maybe some people got scared off because he didn't have a good game last time.
Okay. Adam, what are you doing with Boston?
Yeah, same as Alex. I'm not really interested in the four scorers like Tatum, Brown, Kemba, or five, I guess. Tatum, Brown, Kemba, Smart, Fournier. Like none of these guys really stand out here. Dallas is a really slow team. They're going to cut into each other's production enough. They're just not priced to have another mouth to feed. But Robert Williams isn't a high usage guy, which in some respects obviously isn't great because it does make him more volatile. Like he rebounds well, but also averages almost 4 blocks per 36 minutes. When you're relying on someone who, like Alex said, gets a lot of defensive stats, it gives them a very high ceiling, especially on FanDuel where they're worth 3 points. But that's just a more volatile stat. You're going to get more fluctuations game to game than you are on something like rebounding or even scoring. And so it makes his floor a little bit lower because in the games where he doesn't get a bunch of blocks, he's probably not going to score a lot of points either. And you're kind of just left with the rebounds. But in the games where he does get blocks, he's going to have monster games. So nothing from the last game where Williams was disappointing, takes me off of him tonight. It just reinforces what, I had said about him that day. He's he's got a much higher ceiling than a lot of players priced around him and a much lower floor than a lot of players priced around him. The playing time looks really, really good though.
Okay. Any priorities from Boston right now?
Williams, if there was one.
Okay. Let me stick with you then. Go to Houston and Brooklyn. James Harden facing his former team, 12.5-point favorites here against the awful Houston squad, 230 total. Kicking it off with Houston, though, Adam. Christian Wood is likely to play here. John Wall, meanwhile, is questionable. We can get into all of these guys, including Kevin Porter Jr., whose last couple of games have seen his minutes climb considerably, 31 and 36 since the departure of Victor Oladipo. What are your thoughts here on a bad Houston team in what, though, should be a pace-up game and might give decent opportunities to some of these guys at the top of the pool?
Yeah, Wood, Wall, and Porter, I think, are the three that you're looking at that there's some interest in. John Wall's been playing pretty good minutes for considering, he's John Wall on a team that's going nowhere and kind of trying to lose games, but you're still getting like at least 33 or 34 minutes. He's got a much higher usage rate and a much higher assist percentage than most players priced around him. So even though he's not the most efficient player, it does give him a really high ceiling. But you mentioned Kevin Porter's minutes. He got up to 36 minutes last game, and he's only played 2 games so far without Oladipo and with Wall, but has about a 23% usage rate. Assist percentage comes down as you would expect. If Wall is in, I think Porter's still fine. $6K on DraftKings and a $5,500 small forward on FanDuel. If Wall's out, though, I think Porter takes a giant step forward. He's got about a 40% assist percentage in the games he's played without Wall and Oladipo. Usage rate is mid 20s as well. So I think Porter goes from being a play that I'm fine with to a play that I really, really like if Wall is ruled out.
Okay, Alex, where are you going with Houston?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that we've seen Porter's production really fall because, he started off playing with basically all the Houston guys out. Now, Wall has been playing these past couple of games. Wood has been out, but he's probable tonight. So if all 3 of them are in, then I feel like Porter is kind of off the board for me because we've seen over these last 2 games, his assists have fallen about 50%. His usage has been down a little bit. So I expect that to even out, but all in all, less production. So if Wall is out, that does change it at 6K on DraftKings, 5,500 on FanDuel. Kevin Porter would be a above average play, which there aren't too many on this slate. So I think he'd be a priority.
Okay. Anything else on this Houston team, Adam?
No, that's it.
All right,
if Wood were to not play, then obviously you can go back to Kelly Olynyk.
All right, then talk to me about Brooklyn a little bit. The Brooklyn Nets have James Harden, again, one of your favorite players in the deep dive today. You have him just still with monster production, despite the fact that Kyrie Irving is playing alongside of him. Still huge games. One of the best players in the league, and over the last month, averaging more minutes than any player in the league. So that really just lends a lot of credence to looking at James Harden and wanting to roster him every day. Is there blowout risk here? Sure, but you and I discussed it the other day. When you try and predict blowouts and people say you need to predict them, then you can go and look at that same game that Brooklyn played against Minnesota, right? Where it was competitive and the spread was easy double digits. So, I don't see any reason to really concern myself all that much with that. If you like James Harden, you like him today, and you're not worried too much about it getting out of control because he already leads the league in minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one important thing to keep in mind is there's a natural tendency when someone like Kyrie comes back to say, obviously Harden's not expected to produce at as high a rate as he was when Kyrie was out, but his salary didn't adjust to make up for that. If Harden had been 12,500 on DraftKings or something where he should be if Kyrie is out, it would be completely different when Kyrie comes back. But since he was drastically underpriced with Kyrie out, he can still be underpriced with Kyrie in. And I think that he is. He kind of, when he first started playing with Kyrie, you saw the usage come down a little bit. He was sort of taking a back seat a little bit. But as he's gotten more comfortable in the offense, he's clearly taken over. In the last 10 games that they've played together without Durant, 1.6 DraftKings points per minute for Harden, 31% usage rate, 14% rebounding percentage, 42% assist percentage, almost 39 minutes per game. So everything looks great there. He's still still, even with Kyrie, he averages almost the same fantasy points per minute as Luka Doncic. Then you get this matchup against a Houston team that doesn't defend well, that plays at a fast pace. And, I just think it's a spot where Harden still looks great.
Would you say Harden's one of your top options today as well, Alex?
Yeah, I think he's probably the spend up of the day. Just playing huge minutes. He's averaged 38 on the year. And then, you got to factor in this revenge because, he's gone from this team where they're kind of struggling, and now, all of a sudden, Brooklyn's one of the top dogs in the East. So I feel like this could be, as our friend or our pal Emax says, a remember me game, because Harden, he's really upped his game since he got traded. So I don't think that really matters for fantasy, but that's not making me not want to click his name. I'll tell you that. What
are you doing with the rest of the Nets?
The rest of the Nets aren't super exciting. Their center rotation has gotten a little clogged because you have Jordan, Green, and Claxton all kind of taking minutes as center. And then Blake Griffin, they said they want to use him as center, but it hasn't happened yet, which has been a little bit of a surprise. None of those guys are playing enough minutes to really factor in. And then guys like Bruce Brown, TLC, Johnson, they're all seeing less minutes with Kyrie back, and they have a salary bump from him being out before. So not really seeing anything there.
All right. Anything outside of James Harden for you, Adam?
No, Kyrie coming back just kills the value on so many other guys. And then Kyrie is really, really expensive. Clearly he can have a good game, but just extremely expensive.
Okay. So we'll go to Utah and Memphis first. Before we do, we have an awesome promo running that I'm sure many of you have already heard of, watching our other shows, watching the strategy show, the tip-off, all of that good stuff. But MLB season isn't just around the corner. It's tomorrow. It kicks off tomorrow. Very exciting stuff, which means we've got an incredible promo, probably the best one we've done since the turn of the year. We're doing a $9 Awesemo Plus MLB all access to all of our MLB content package for $9. 9 days, $9. So you get like a third of a month for $9. Get your foot in the door. Get to check out everything we have. Ownership, player projections, all of which are created by Awesemo. Alex Baker himself helped him win quite a bit of money over the years. And my favorite tool, the Top Stack tool, which I think is extraordinarily unique and will really change the way you look at playing DFS baseball. We've got the lineup builder too, fantasy cruncher add-on, so many things that are available with what we have in our MLB package. If you go to awesemo.com/promos, you'll find an easy way to click that. It is starting 9, the number 9, all one word is the promo. But if you go to awesemo.com/promos, you can bypass typing all that in. It's right there. And if you decide, hey, I want basketball too, I want hockey too, I want MMA and PGA and esports and all of that stuff and NASCAR, go to awesemo.com/join for that and check out any of our packages, whether it's weekly, monthly, annual, single sport, every sport, all access, you name it. Whether you just want to test the waters or whether you want to make a legitimate investment of this, you could do an express pass for less than $4 a week or go the distance and grab an annual pass for every sport we have to offer. And by the way, it's not just a lot of sites out there might be like, oh yeah, we offer MMA, and they get 2 articles, right? Oh, NASCAR, and they got one guy that does NASCAR. They do an article once a week. We have tools, ownership, we have projections, the top driver tools, top golfer tools, top fighter tools, all of this stuff that is really going to be the hub for every single thing you need to be able to make good lineups. And even for sports that you aren't that familiar with, that's the great part. Just look at Adam. Adam doesn't know shit about hockey, and he had a huge run playing NHL just last year. Am I wrong? You knew nothing about it at the time.
No, and I'll add that I'm probably one of the best MMA players, and I know even less about that sport.
There you go. And that's through using the tool. So that's all you need to know. Check it out, awesemo.com/join, or use the starting 9 promo for 9 days, 9 days for $9 over at awesemo.com. All right, Alex, the Utah Jazz, big one here. No Donovan Mitchell, which means that you're going to get colossal ownership on guys like Jordan Clarkson for obvious reasons here. Mike Conley's going to be pretty high owned. Even Jingles and Rudy Gobert up there enough to get a little bit of recognition. Break down this Utah team for us, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think Mitchell being out, that's the key injury of the day that I don't think any of the sites saw that coming. So that's opening up a ton of value. So I'm looking at these games that he missed in January. It looks like Joe Ingles got the start. So we pretty much know the rotation from when Conley misses. So the main beneficiaries have been Clarkson and Ingles off the Ingles because he's getting more minutes, and then Clarkson is getting a lot more run as well. So I think Clarkson has the best price of the bunch today, and I do expect Ingles to be a little bit less effective with Conley in the starting lineup as opposed to Mitchell because of the assists. Although, actually, now that I'm looking at it, they assist about the same. So pretty much you can go to anyone on this team, and they're a good value. So I'll be looking primarily at Conley because he's going to get more assist opportunities, Ingles for the minutes, and then Clarkson for the minutes.
Okay. Interesting comment from Porter Rock in chat saying not knowing a sport is better for DFS. You go straight off the numbers instead of getting, instead of your head getting in the way. To some extent, there's definitely some truth to that.
I'm a pretty firm believer in that.
Yeah, sure. And there've been a lot of people that have been saying that for a while. But I feel like, Adam, when it comes to basketball, you know the sport exceptionally well. And you do use it, I think, sometime to find an edge in the information that's publicly available.
Yeah, I mean, knowing a sport doesn't actually hurt as long as you're sticking to the numbers. But like, I know I'll get in trouble sometimes with baseball, which is a sport that I know the best, because I'll personally disagree with the numbers, and more often than not, I personally end up being wrong. So it definitely, I don't know. For me, I've always found it a little bit easier when I can just run the numbers and then not really not have an opinion at all about the names I'm looking at. Just put them in my lineup, and normally it does pretty well.
Yeah, Alex, maybe knowing the sport isn't necessarily the bad thing, but it's letting your biases get in the way of what the numbers are telling you. That could be the thing that really jams you out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think knowing the sport is huge, like, because you can tell, like, if your lineup is a good lineup or not just by looking at it. The problem is, like, if maybe your disagreement is with something that is for reasons you don't understand, like, and one good example would be like the Vegas lines, because like sometimes you see a line that looks a little bit off, and it's like maybe there's some weather factor in baseball, or a lot of times if a guy's questionable, they'll kind of have the line in between if they're out or in, so that leads to a lot of guessing. So I think that when you have a lot of resources available that you know are winning resources, that helps a lot. If you're just trying to pick a sport and go to some random site, like there's no way to know if the advice is good, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I just one more thing. It's also like with basketball, it doesn't hurt to understand rotations and what minutes could look like and how matchups work. And if a team's likely going to go big against another team. With baseball, it's a little bit more by the numbers, where you have a lineup, and unless you're worried about a guy getting switch hit for, there isn't nearly as much concern as there would be when it comes to basketball. Would you agree with that, Adam? There's a lot more room for kind of just preemptive changes or spur of the moment changes in basketball, depending on the flow.
Yeah, for sure. That's one spot where knowing the sport helps, definitely. And like joking aside, it definitely does help to know a sport, like Alex said, just to at least know like what you're looking at in your lineup. Like, for example, with League of Legends, I don't have any biases, but I guarantee I make some mistakes because I just probably do stupid stuff occasionally because I don't know the difference. But like, you know, with basketball, with football, when you get late scratches occasionally, like it's definitely helpful to know the sport and kind of know how to quickly adjust. And even, you know, other sports that don't have late news, to at least be able to look at your lineup and say like, okay, wait, this doesn't make any sense at all. Like, why am I getting this?
All right, let me stick with you here, Adam, since we got Alex's take on Utah already. First things first, we got a super chat. I will ask you about this. Thank you, Chris. He says, Jeremy Grant and Conley or Saban Lee and Pascal Siakam on FanDuel?
I would lean Conley and to whoever it was he said.
Jeremy
Grant. But I think both combinations are fine.
All right, talk to me about the Utah Jazz, Sans Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, so I mean, like Alex said, that's obviously a huge piece here because pricing didn't change. Jordan Clarkson gets more minutes. There have been 2 games this year where Mitchell was out and Conley was in. Clarkson's averaged about 31 to 32 minutes in those games. Ingles has been at about 29 minutes, but in his total starts this year, he's at about 31 minutes. So both of those guys should get more minutes than usual. Clarkson's got about a 30% usage rate without Mitchell on the floor this year. Ingles has averaged about a fantasy point per minute. So they both stand out as obvious values. Mike Conley is really interesting to me because he has been very productive in the 2 games without Mitchell. He's averaged about 1.26 DraftKings points per minute. If you go and look at his numbers with Mitchell on and Mitchell off this year, they're actually almost identical in terms of point per minute production, in terms of usage rate, in terms of assist percentage. But the thing you have to keep in mind, and the reason that Conley should be a big beneficiary here with Mitchell out, is that Mitchell's absence changes this rotation. So Conley's played about 450 minutes, give or take, without Mitchell on the floor this year. Clarkson has been on the floor for almost every single one of those minutes. The rotation's going to change today to where you're going to get a lot of minutes where Conley's out there without Clarkson and obviously without Mitchell. So you're going to get a lot more productive minutes for Conley there. And then the minutes he plays alongside Clarkson are going to be similar to the minutes he plays alongside Mitchell. So that's why it is a bump for Conley. Even if you're someone that does, look at on off data, you might get, kind of thrown off there. You have to remember that the rotation is going to look different. So Conley looks really good. Bogdanovich and Royce O'Neal, I think both get slight bumps in playing time as well, because you are taking 35 minutes or so out of the lineup in Donovan Mitchell. Bogdanovich has averaged about 29 minutes per game this year. I think you see him get 32 to 34 here. O'Neal, I think most likely plays like 34 to 36. Bogdanovich is the higher ceiling guy. O'Neal projects as a good point per dollar value as well, but he is someone that I would say to pay a lot of attention to ownership. He's a lot of times in situations like this, Royce O'Neal ends up being popular because his median projection is good for his salary, but he's just not a very volatile player. And the chances of him being someone that you have to win a tournament are pretty low. So if the ownership does get high, I wouldn't be too nervous about going somewhere else. I don't think Rudy Gobert is particularly affected one way or the other. I think he's a perfectly fine option. Like, he's averaged 1.25 fantasy points per minute this year. You're probably going to get 32 or 33 minutes from him. I don't think that Mitchell really moves the needle one way or the other on him, though.
Ben P. Lafayette, I like this video so much that I took your advice and slammed that like button twice. Awesome. You only hit the down button twice if you don't like the show. You hit the like button once. Unless you're multi-accounting, then hit it from as many accounts as you have. I appreciate that for sure. Still close to getting up to that 500 number, north of 350. What do we got? 2,000 people watching. Let's make it happen. Porter Rock with the super chat says, I make the most money straight off numbers and birth of kids. Hold on. Oh, stop it. I'm going to read this. Birth of kids, death and family revenge games. Kind of dark, but biggest boosts in players' games. I'm hoping you.
Is that the same person that said he just plays right off the numbers, or is that someone else?
He's the same person. It must be a joke. It must be a joke. That must be a joke. A dark joke, yet a joke nonetheless. Thanks for the super chat, though. What about Memphis, Alex? Anything here? Such a popular side for Utah, maybe not as much for the Grizzlies.
One more thing that occurred to me about the Jazz real quick is that Conley comes out of the game a lot faster than Mitchell. So that translated to even more minutes for Clarkson when Mitchell was out compared to Conley. So as if you guys needed more reason to click on Clarkson. Anyway, going to Memphis, the guy that had the big game last time was DeAnthony Melton. He's a really talented young player that's kind of log jammed behind John Morant, where I feel like if he wasn't on the same team as Morant, he'd probably be a rising star, but he's kind of having trouble getting the minutes. But I do feel like that was a little bit fluky because in the 3 games previous, like one, he didn't even play, and the other 3 averaged like 18 minutes. So that could be a trap play, even though I think he is kind of an interesting value tonight. The rest of the team, I mean, Utah is a really tough matchup, so I'm not seeing anyone jumping out, but I don't mind taking a chance on Ja Morant because he is such a talent.
Okay. Oh, man, the whole revenge narrative and birthday, all that narrative popping up. Like the Kobe Bryant retirement narrative is legit because he controls the narrative. But like a wide receiver narrative, he still has to have the ball thrown to him.
If you're ever going to buy into a narrative, it should be a scoring narrative in basketball.
Exactly.
For rebounding.
Oh, well, for a ball handling guard, for someone that actually already controls the offense.
Yeah. Or like the first time Anthony Davis played the Pelicans and LeBron James just decided to pass him the ball every possession.
Right.
But yeah, I mean,
Already
like,
a high usage player.
yeah, but like it's really dumb in football. It's even dumber in baseball.
Yeah. Oh God. The whole hand-eye coordination improves because he's pissed off that he's facing his former team. And then people get into the catcher's facing the old pitcher. I don't know. Maybe. Who knows?
I mean, sometimes things happen that you just can't understand. My model heavily factors in revenge games.
How do you quantify that?
Well, you gotta like figure out how angry they are. So it's like, how much did they get screwed over? Like, how many of their former teammates are on the team still? Like, how many? Like, is the coach still the same coach? Like, all those things.
Well, all right. Well, I'm gonna have to start digging into that. Jordan says some people say cucumbers taste better pickled. Yeah, pickles are delicious. Cucumbers taste like absolute dog shit. Adam, do you think anything on Memphis stands out to you?
DeAnthony Melton. He played, like Alex said, he played more minutes last game. Justice Winslow was out that game. And he's out again tonight. So I think you can count on probably getting at least around like 24 minutes from Melton. But you also have Grayson Allen questionable, who he played his first stint last game and then left the game with an injury. And you ended up getting 28 minutes from Melton. He's really been blocked by Allen and, to some extent since he came back, Winslow. So if Allen is also out, there's a lot of minutes available for DeAnthony Melton, who has been very good from a production standpoint this year. So I think, the matchup is tough, but Melton's cheap and does have a path to more minutes than normal here.
Okay. You guys want to talk BVP?
No.
I'm joking. We'll do a lot of that. By the way, be sure to check out all of our baseball shows coming up. You're going to have a ton of them. And I believe we have a giveaway for baseball too. Where is that? Oh yeah. We're giving away, where is it? A full year of Awesemo Plus MLB subscription. Full year of Awesemo Plus. Just go to our Awesemo MLB handle, check out the pinned tweet, and follow. I think you have to like, follow, and decide on who's going to have more strikeouts. Not sure where it is. Go to Awesemo _ or go to Awesemo MLB. It's a full year of Awesemo MLB, so it's worth throwing your hat in the ring if you're not already a subscriber. All right. Okay, let's keep it moving here then if we got nothing else. Anything else for this game, Alex?
I just saw Kendrick Nunn is out tonight, so that does make a lot of the Heat a little bit more interesting, although it doesn't seem like a huge factor.
Okay. Adam, anything else here?
No.
All right, flip it over to you then, Alex. We've got Toronto and OKC. Kyle Lowry sidelined here, 7.5-point favorites still against Oklahoma City. A big part of me wants to just take the points with OKC, and they're so bad that even despite how awful Toronto's playing and the absence of Kyle Lowry, they're still 7.5 point favorites on the road. So I'll stay away from it. I do have a solid bet later in the day. We'll keep the streak going. We've been hitting nicely lately. Got Denver -5 yesterday. Sixers almost backdoored that, but we made it work. They just looked awful out there closing out that road stretch. So, Alex, what are we doing with the Raptors without Kyle Lowry today?
I think this is the other team I'm targeting here today because with Lowry out, I mean, he's a guy that has a 31% assist percentage, a 21% usage, and he's going to be replaced in the starting lineup most likely by Aaron Baines, who is not a great fantasy player except for rebounding. So I think that everyone else in the lineup is going to benefit in points and assists. So, I mean, the main guys would be Van Vliet and Siakam. They're pretty good options on an average night. Now you put them in a matchup versus a very young Thunder team. I think they're some of the top plays on the night, regardless of site. So I'm going to those guys a lot, and then I don't mind some of the other Raptors.
Okay. How big is the impact for no Kyle Lowry today, Adam? And I will throw out Van Vliet, Siakam, and Lowry are all so similarly priced on DraftKings. With Lowry out, Van Vliet and Siakam are the same price on DraftKings, whereas on FanDuel, they're all separated by about $1,000, with Lowry being the cheapest. So the cheapest of the three is sidelined today, but I think you're still going to see a decent amount of ownership pouring in on these guys.
Yeah, I think there's still value here. I mean, we've talked about it a lot this year that Lowry, Van Vliet, and Siakam, when all three are active, produce at very similar rates between like 1.05 and 1.1 fantasy points per minute. But you take Lowry out, and in the games where Van Vliet and Siakam have played without him, Van Vliet's at about 1.13 fantasy points per minute. Siakam's at 1.19 DraftKings points per minute. I think those rates go up a little bit as well because you're replacing Norman Powell with Gary Trent, who's a lower usage player. So it makes Van Vliet look a lot better. It makes Siakam look a lot better. But it also does open up the door for some other stuff. You know, OG Anunoby had a ridiculously good game the other day. He's still a little bit more expensive than I feel comfortable with, but he does most likely play a few more minutes without Lowry. Where I do become interested, though, Gary Trent Jr. is 5,100. He only played 29 minutes the last game that Lowry sat, but he was in some early foul trouble there. He followed that up with 38 minutes against the Pistons last game. I think you most likely see huge minutes out of Trent again, and you know he's pretty cheap. You got 28 minutes, 27 or 28 minutes from Rodney Hood last game. He's extremely inexpensive. He did benefit a bit from Gary Trent's foul trouble. So I think that most likely you see Trent play a few more minutes. You see Hood lose a couple of minutes. And then the other spot that I'm really, really interested in here, you know, Alex mentioned Baines most likely starts, and that's what we saw last time. But Baines only played about 14 or 15 minutes. Chris Boucher got 24 minutes off the bench. That's the only game. So for the last month, Boucher has averaged 23 minutes per game. In his last 8 games, he's only exceeded that 23 minutes once, and it was his 24 minutes the last time that Lowry was out. Lowry's absence just opens up so many minutes. It most likely will take Siakam from playing a lot of minutes at the 5 to playing most of his minutes at the 4. I think that you get mid-20s in minutes from Boucher again, who's extremely inexpensive and produces at a very high rate when he's on the floor.
All right, talk to me about priorities. I know ownership can tell that story. I know both of you guys broke it down a little bit, but just because it's such a big slate and there are a lot of really great players across this 10-gamer, who would you say you're throwing in as priorities today in tournaments?
Siakam and Van Vliet, I think, are the 2 priorities. I would say it kind of depends on your position. Like Boucher has the higher ceiling, obviously, but he's also at center. I would say Trent and Boucher are 3 and 4, and then Anunoby and Hood are 5 and 6.
Okay. Alex, priorities for you for Toronto?
I think Van Vliet and Siakam are kind of 1A and 1B for me. And then Boucher, I think, is a great play regardless, but there is a off chance he starts. I guess versus Moses Brown, it's probably not as likely, but if we did get some news late that he was starting, that'd be huge. I'd probably try to get on to more of them.
Do you think there's a chance $3,100 Baines ends up playing enough here to matter?
There's always a chance, but it's just really hard to trust after the last couple of games he started and didn't really play that much.
Yeah, I kind of thought that against the front court of Nurkic and Cantor, he was going to get big minutes. And like the fact that he didn't there kind of makes me think it's just not going to happen.
What if Moses Brown hauls in another 30 rebounds in the first half and they need someone to do a little bit on that front? But the truth is, it's not even like Aaron Baines has been an exceptional rebounder. He's not. I don't know, Adam. I look at it. I look at this a little bit differently than other centers, where there are certain centers out there where you say, "Oh man, if he even gets 22 minutes, he could be a phenomenal option." Whereas with Baines, he's a 0.81 fantasy point per minute guy, DraftKings point per minute guy. It's not like he's even been all that successful on a per minute basis in his like 15 minutes. So 20 minutes from him, sure, maybe something's possible, but I think you both need the minutes, but then you need him to produce better than he normally does, and it's hard to hit both of those.
Yeah, it's just always like when someone starts, and this is obviously assuming he starts at 3,100 at center, it always you almost get like FOMO because it's just like I'm gonna feel like such an idiot if he plays 30 minutes and scores like 35 points. But the thing that I really just go back to is if you had to pick a matchup where Baines is more useful than Chris Boucher size-wise, it's Nurkic and Enes Kanter, and he was useless there. They just went to Boucher. So I feel like if you're just looking at the matchup, it's more like it's easier for Boucher to be on the floor here than even in that last game.
Yep. All right, fair enough. What about the Thunder then? Alex, you've got a Oklahoma City Thunder team without SGA, no more Al Horford, no Lou Dort, and then Alexei Pokusevski is also sidelined for this one. He was someone that was getting some talk about earlier today. We discussed him on the strategy show Monday through Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern, every single day of the week. They're down a lot of players, and it's still one of those teams that despite what we've seen in terms of injuries, not a ton of ownership has gone to them. But enough guys drop out of the rotation, then it starts to look a little bit different. We turn a corner and you start seeing bigger ownership come in, which is what I believe we're going to see tonight for the Thunder.
Yeah, I think this one is pretty interesting with the Thunder. With Pokusevski out, it's really unclear who is going to start this one at small forward. So I'm kind of looking at Kenrich Williams as possibly an option. He played a lot of minutes earlier in the season, but has taken on a lesser role with some of the front court players being more prioritized. So I'm looking at Kenrich Williams as a good play, but if he's not starting, I'll probably swap off him. The other guy I'm looking at with more wing minutes, I'm looking at Steve Mikhailuk, who I feel like he has the ability to be a little bit higher usage player, which they're going to need with the Thunder not having Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. So I think the door is open for Mikhailuk to play more minutes. He did see pretty good minutes in the last one at about 27. So at 4,200, I think that's intriguing.
All right. Adam, Oklahoma City, Isaiah Roby around 20. Let me update. I do want to get an update on ownership just to make sure we're all on the same page here. He was at 29% last time I looked. Pretty important team to talk about now that more guys are falling out. Okay, Roby's down to 20% on DraftKings. Mikhailuk, though, with the news, is up to 20%. And then even Kenrich Williams getting a little bit of love. Where do you fall on this Thunder team?
Yeah, I think Svi is a good point per dollar play. I start to get a little concerned as his ownership comes up, just because he's not typically someone that produces at that high of a rate. There is usage available, obviously, like they need someone to score. But he's mostly a shooter. Like he's not someone that I expect to go out there and create a lot for himself and really take over a game. So I don't really know how much better he can get on a per minute basis. So, I think he's a good point per dollar play, but definitely one of those guys that if the ownership gets up there, I think there's plenty of other guys I could pivot to. I am interested in whoever starts in place of Pokusevski. It could be Kenrich Williams. It could also be Josh Hall, who is minimum salary and has played about 20 minutes in each of the Thunder's last couple of games. So I played 22 minutes last game, got a couple minutes at the end. We don't really know a whole lot about him. He's only played 93 minutes this year. He's only averaged 0.6 DraftKings points per minute, but does have a 19% usage rate over those minutes, has a 16% assist percentage, and again, is minimum salary. So that's someone that, you certainly could see get some run here just because Oklahoma City wants to see what he can do.
Any top options from Oklahoma City?
If Hall starts, I would say at 3K him. I'll mention on Roby too. I think he is a good value. My concern is that you did have Tony Bradley join the rotation last game. So almost all of the center minutes, with the exception of about 4, went to either Moses Brown or Tony Bradley. That hurts Isaiah Roby. I think not necessarily in terms of playing time, but in terms of production. You'd prefer he gets center minutes, but he still played 34 minutes. So I think he's still a pretty good value. Moses Brown, basically everything we said about Robert Williams can be applied to him. He's got a really high floor for his salary. He's got a really high ceiling for his salary, really low floor for his salary. Another guy that blocks shots at a high rate and rebounds well, doesn't do a whole lot usage wise, but is still cheap enough where, clearly he can go and give you a really big game.
Alex, the New York Knicks are traveling to Minnesota. They're 3.5-point favorites with a 219 total. Now, they are actually drawing a pretty solid matchup. Minnesota is one of the worst defenses in the league. Even over the last month, they've been a bottom 5 defense. They're playing at one of the faster paces in basketball. There's just a lot working for New York today. But in that same breath, there's a lot of other really great plays across the board, and they're getting virtually no ownership whatsoever. So is there any merit to looking towards a Julius Randle in a very, very appealing matchup and saying, hey, I will. And by the way, I'm talking about DraftKings. On FanDuel, Julius Randle at an egregious $9,300 is obviously going to get some attention. But on DraftKings, no one's really getting involved at all for this New York team. Where are you at here? Despite a good matchup, there's really no ownership going to them on DraftKings. A lot of that due to price points. And one more thing, Julius Randle's playing more minutes than any player not named James Harden over the last month. So he's going to be out on the floor for quite some time tonight once again.
Yeah, that's pretty amusing that you're pointing out 9,300 on FanDuel as being egregiously low for Julius Randle. That really shows how far he's come this year because
he's fantastic.
Yeah, he's really been upping his game. And then the matchup today versus Minnesota is a good one. So I think this could be a good day for the Nets. That being said, I do feel like now that the Knicks are a little bit more healthy, hurt Randall's production just a tiny bit. Where I mean, they have Burks, Bullock, Alfred Payton all back, and Derrick Rose. So these are all guys that kind of take a little bit more from the categories he scores in compared to guys like Frank Ntilikina. So I think I like Randall, but I'm not going to go out of my way to get him.
Adam, it looks like throughout the day, even on FanDuel, his projected ownership has come down a little bit. He's literally the only Knicks player getting any ownership on FanDuel whatsoever, but not much on DraftKings. Like I said, is there any tournament appeal here to a guy that has proven he can run out there and give us 65, 68 DraftKings points on any given night, particularly in good spots? Or are you worried that Rose returning and his team getting healthy is going to curtail his production?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely tournament appeal here. If you look at the boom bust tool for DraftKings, he's projected for about 6.5% ownership with over an 11% chance of being in the optimal lineup. So that really stands out. But I do also think the Derrick Rose news is really, really big here because, Alex mentioned that it potentially hurts his production a little bit. And you've seen that. He's played 8 games this year with Alfred Payton and Derrick Rose, both active, 1.24 DraftKings points per minute. But compared to games where only Payton's been active, his assist percentage goes from 26.8% down to 19% when Rose is out there as well. So you have seen, the assists hurt a little bit, and Rose obviously is a high usage guy. So if Rose is in, I think Randall's still a very good play. I still like getting him in tournaments. But if Rose is out, it just looks a little bit better for Randall. And then it also opens the door for a $4,100 Alfred Payton on DraftKings, who the playing time would still be volatile because you still have Emmanuel quickly behind him, but he's averaged 28 minutes per game this year in games that Derrick Rose has not played. We've kind of been annoyed all season long that Tom Thibodeau has preferred Payton over Emmanuel quickly. So, against Minnesota at 4,100, if Rose is out, I think Payton has some tournament value. And if Rose is in, I think Rose has some tournament appeal after playing 26 and 28 minutes in his last 2 games.
On the other side of this one, Minnesota gets a pace down spot against a good defense. Knicks still, even you thought they'd come down to earth, but top 8 defense over the last 30 days or since the start of March, and still playing at an egregiously slow pace. I mean, the difference in pace between New York and Minnesota, Adam, is insane. Is there anything you can get to for Minnesota today? I know you've been a guy that likes to get to Karl Anthony Towns when he's priced right and when his ownership is down, but is this one of those spots?
Towns is the only guy I can see having interest in, and I still think it's really tough to get there because you kind of like thinking about the different formats. Like if you're playing tournaments, obviously Towns has a high ceiling, but there's so many mid-range centers where it may be hard to pinpoint exactly which one's going to have a big game, but I would bet that someone in that sub 8K range has a big game and puts up a score that is good in tournaments. And then in cash, I think you're just the build might not let you pay up at center. So, I haven't built a lineup yet, but I think it might be kind of tough to get there in optimal lineups and then even in a lineup where you're trying to maximize upside. So if I, crunch lineups and get to Towns, I certainly have no issue with it. I don't love the matchup. The Knicks are solid defensively. They do play slow, but Towns has averaged 1.45 DraftKings points per minute and almost 35 minutes per game. So there is a very high ceiling. There's just a very high ceiling on a lot of guys. And I think Towns might be one of the more difficult ones to get to.
Over the last 4 games, you've seen, Alex, Jaden McDaniels play progressively more minutes, from 29, then 33, then 36, then 38 in that 5-point loss to the Brooklyn Nets. He's getting some attention today, and I think a lot of that also has to do with the fact that there just isn't a lot of great value despite having so many games. Is Jaden McDaniels going to be someone that you see yourself getting a decent amount of tonight?
Someone I would consider given the playing time, but the production this year hasn't been very impressive. He only has a 12% usage rate, a 6% assist rate, and then his rebounding is at about 7%. So really doesn't excel in any category. He does block shots well, and we saw that last game. He had 4 blocks, so I'm kind of looking at this last game where he got 5 stocks as a little bit fluky, and I feel like people are going to be on him. So I don't necessarily love going back to McDaniels here.
Do you want to say anything about him before we move on, Adam?
No, his optimal lineup percentage is about half of his ownership percentage on DraftKings right now.
Okay, not great. So what is it, like 5 and 11, 5.5 and 11, or
7.5 and 5? So
yeah,
I rounded a little bit, but
not great at all. Let's move to Sacramento and San Antonio. Going back to you, Alex, the Sacramento Kings are 2.5-point dogs against the Spurs, 231 total. So a nice little plump total between these two squads. Sacramento facing the San Antonio Spurs on the road. And the only news here is Hassan Whiteside questionable to play. But we've seen really great production recently from guys like De'Aaron Fox. Tyrese Halliburton's getting a lot of minutes, lacking the peripherals, but still has been pretty solid as a scorer. And even, pretty impressive performances from guys like Rashawn Holmes, whose price is continuously rising. I feel like this team is a nightly and under-owned team, and we're seeing them get nothing today. Is that accurate in your opinion, or are there spots to exploit for a Kings team that's getting pretty much overlooked entirely, at least on DraftKings?
Yeah, I think the spot seems pretty good where they're facing the Spurs. And then Bagley being out doesn't hurt. So the one thing is it seems like the salaries just aren't working in your favor today for the Kings, even though it is a good matchup. So, with the Kings, the production is pretty evenly spread out among the starters. Although, Fox is clearly the best. He's 9.3K on DraftKings and 10K on FanDuel. So that's way too high in my opinion. So then I'm kind of looking at Halliburton, who's been getting the start. The only problem is, even though he's been starting, the minutes haven't been the most impressive. So not playing that many more minutes starting versus coming off the bench. So I'm not super interested.
What about you, Adam?
Yeah, not too much for me either. I think that they're always kind of appealing because the starters play a ton of minutes, but on DraftKings, the pricing is just, I think, pretty difficult to get to. On FanDuel, it looks a little bit better where you have Tyrese Halliburton at 5,600 and you have Harrison Barnes at 5,800. Barnes benefits a little bit from Bagley being out because his rebounding numbers go up. Halliburton's playing time is solidified, but like Alex said, not getting a ton more minutes because he typically was closing over Marvin Bagley anyway. But those guys both look okay on FanDuel. It's really tough for me to get to them on DraftKings though.
Okay. Is that all you have for this one and the entire Sacramento team? From
Sacramento, yeah.
What about for San Antonio?
Yeah, I think this is a really good spot for the Spurs, and there's a lot of guys that are decent options. Everybody in their starting lineup, I think you could at least make a case for. But the one that really, really stands out to me is DeJounte Murray here on DraftKings at $7,000. I think that on a lot of slates in this matchup and at that price, he would be one of the most popular guards. But because of because of Donovan Mitchell being out and then also Lowry being out, you're going to have a lot of ownership going to those guys, and deservedly so. But it's going to just push ownership down on DeJounte Murray a little bit. Right now, we have him projected for about 12% ownership on DraftKings with a 14% chance of being in the optimal lineup. He's been playing more minutes lately, averaging 33 minutes per game over the last month. We've seen him play north of 35 minutes in competitive games. Sacramento has been one of the faster teams in the league all season. They're playing a little bit slower now, but still in the top half of the league in pace over the last month. They've been one of the least efficient defenses all season long. And DeJounte Murray just contributes in every category. He gets steals, he scores, he rebounds, he gets assists. He's someone that I think would just be a lot higher owned if people weren't if we didn't have the injury news on the slate, which obviously it makes sense for the ownership to come down. But at the same time, it's a player that on his own merits is a great play, I think.
All right. Chris Thomason says, is Mikhailuk a solid play at shooting guard tonight? We kind of touched on this already, Alex, but if you want to answer it again, since he super chatted us, just quick thoughts on whether or not you like Mikhailuk at shooting guard.
Yeah, I like Svi. He's in line for a lot more minutes with some of their wings out, specifically Pokusevski, because they don't really have much depth behind him. So I think the minutes will be there. On the year, Svi's gotten about 14% assist percentage, but with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander out, I think that could go up. And then he doesn't score a ton when he's not assisted, so I don't think the usage will increase a ton, but he does have a 19% usage on the year, which is solid.
I have one thing to add to that too that I think forgot to mention when we talked about OKC. Ty Jerome is questionable. If he sits, they were really shorthanded at Svi's positions.
Yeah, absolutely. That is seemingly small, but it's not. It should have an impact. So pay close attention to that one. Where did I leave off? Was I going to you for the San Antonio Spurs, Alex?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Adam on DeJounte Murray. 7K on DraftKings is a little bit too cheap for him. I think the whole Spurs team looks solid. Lonnie Walker was supposed to play this one, but he was ruled out, so that is going to keep the minutes high for everyone. The one position I'm not really sure what's going to happen is at center because Borji Jang just signed with the Spurs. I'm assuming he's not signing to sit on the bench. So I'm a little tepid on Pirtle, but the other guys, particularly Murray and Derek White and Keldon Johnson, I feel are solid tonight.
All right, 2 games to go, wrapping it up. Then you know what's happening. It's live before lock. Tossing this one straight over to our boys, Josh Engleman. I still love the guy. I mean, a lot of ball busting going on around here, but there's no better strategy show anywhere, no better morning DFS show than some Laffy and Engleman at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Sunday. Be sure to check it out. But yeah, hey, how about SuperDraft, sponsor of the Deeper Dive? Are you playing there yet? If not, I don't really know why you wouldn't be, because when overlays on the table, you got to take advantage of it. When a $50 deposit bonus, when you deposit $50 or more, just by using the promo code Awesemo21, AWESEMO21 is available, you've got to take advantage of it. And when you got low rake, high stake contests that are always expecting overlay, because SuperDraft just partnered with Caesars Rewards to transform the DFS industry forever, you got to take advantage of it. Even if you're saying, man, I want that life-changing money, right? I want that money where I can go buy an island and I want to win the Millie Maker 3 times. Well, in order to do that and really compete, you need to have a sustainable bankroll and figure out ways to do that. Well, the edge has dissipated in a lot of spots. That's, of course, why we have all of these tools at Awesemo.com, but also why you got to see when there's overlay that it really benefits you to build a bankroll. And even if you wanted to move some of that over to these other sites and compete for those huge prize pools, you can do that as well. So there's a lot of reasons to check out SuperDraft. The bonus, the 25K jump shot tonight with 5K up top, and more important than anything else, the overlay. Also, you earn Caesars Rewards every time you enter a contest. That's another little bonus there. Remember, use the promo code Awesemo21, all one word, Awesemo21. Get $50 free when you deposit $50 or more. Just download the SuperDraft app or go to superdraft.io. SuperDraft, sponsor of the Deeper Dive. All right, Milwaukee and the LA Lakers. Adam, Milwaukee Bucks, second straight game at the Staples Center. Just got smoked pretty good by the Clippers. They are 8.5-point favorites against the LeBron and Davis-less Lakers. And we'll get to Andre Drummond momentarily. But first, let's talk about this Bucks team on the road. Where are you going with Giannis?
I think from the little bit I've built lineups before the show, it seems like it's easier to get to Giannis on FanDuel than it is on DraftKings, just because of, combination of factors. But I think he's fine on DraftKings. It's just that I would rather pay up for Harden, as we already talked about. There's some cheap forward options that, whereas like on FanDuel, obviously you have to roster 2 power forwards. On DraftKings, a lot of the cheaper like small forward guys, you can slide down the power forward as well. So I think it's a little bit tougher to get there, but still obviously has a really high ceiling, averages as many fantasy points per minute as anyone else on the slate. It is a tough matchup though. Like even in the games, if the Lakers have played 6 games now without James and without Davis, over that time, they're still 3rd in the league in defensive rating. Like they're still a solid defensive team. Giannis obviously is capable of putting up a big game against anyone, but I don't think that anybody should be looking at the Lakers and saying, they're missing their 2 best players, so it's an easy matchup or anything.
What about you, Alex?
I'm looking at Giannis as a decent option, but I do think Harden is a little bit more of a priority tonight. But the matchup versus the Lakers, when they don't have AD and LeBron, seems solid enough. So I'd go to him. And then I'm looking at Dante DiVincenzo on FanDuel a little bit. I do think that PJ Tucker and Portis being out should lead to a little bit more minutes for DiVincenzo potentially. So I think he's just a little bit of a cheap value on there.
All right, let's go to the Lakers then. Adam, we've got Andre Drummond in his debut with the Lakers starting at center. So what happens here where you had Marc Gasol and Montrezl Harrell already not splitting them down the middle, but the 48 center minutes were going to them in some form or fashion. The only way all 3 of these guys are worked in enough in the rotation for any of them to have any value would be for somehow Frank Vogel to play them alongside each other. And in order for that to happen, that means you'd have Drummond and Gasol or Drummond and Harrell or Harrell and Marc Gasol, who haven't played a single minute alongside of each other this season. Go ahead, give us your opinion on this and how you think it shakes out, because it's a very weird spot that Drummond just jumps straight into the starting lineup.
I'm guessing Gasol doesn't play. Maybe he does, but I'm guessing that you get Drummond starting and Harrell loses some minutes here. I think that overall what it reminds me of is when Karis LeVert first came back, and on DraftKings, he was just instantly really expensive. And on FanDuel, he was priced like the guy had never played an NBA game before. You kind of have the same thing here, where at 7,800 on DraftKings, Andre Drummond actually needs to play 30 plus minutes and play well and all of that. We have no idea what to expect from him, one, because we don't really know what the center rotation is going to look like. But two, he hasn't played in an NBA game since February 12th. He hasn't played more than 17 minutes since February 8th. I have no idea of what his conditioning is like, what kind of shape he's in, any of that. But what it really comes down to, and I kind of laid out the average numbers in the deep dive, at 5,200 on FanDuel, Drummond over the last 2 years has averaged 1.44 FanDuel points per minute. If you just assume he's going to produce at that, close to that rate here with the Lakers for the time period where LeBron is out and Davis is out, he would need to play 18 minutes tonight to get you 26 points and be, an okay option on FanDuel. If he happened to play 22 minutes, you're getting a score that you really, really want. So I think on FanDuel, the risk reward, even though the range of outcomes is really wide because there are so many unknowns, the risk reward skews really heavily towards the reward on FanDuel and really heavily towards the risk side on DraftKings.
Our boy Gene B. Kim with the super chat. Dave, you can buy an acre on the moon for $29.99. That was how much a super chat was. On lunarland.com. Happy belated birthday. Thank you, Gene. I'll look into that.
That would definitely not be the dumbest purchase you've made in the last 24 hours. I would guarantee it.
Maybe not. I could always just buy some land on Decentraland in the virtual world. What bad purchases have I made over the last 24 hours? I've been crushing the altcoins, dude.
Actually, yeah, I guess I've probably made dumber ones than you over the last couple of days.
I don't know. We'll see. I'm sure I have, but I just can't think of any off the top of my head. So, Alex, give me your breakdown on the Lakers front court situation and just the rest of this team altogether.
Yeah, I like Drummond on FanDuel. I mean, the huge price discrepancy between FanDuel and DraftKings. On DraftKings, he's 7,800. I probably will wait and see what happens, because there is a chance that Drummond comes in and plays 30 plus minutes a game. This is totally different than Blake Griffin joining the Nets, because Drummond is a player who's in the age that this is his prime years of basketball. It's just his style of play doesn't really fit the modern day NBA very well. I kind of agree with Adam. I think Gasol will be out of the rotation most likely. The only question is, how many minutes will Drummond play? It could be anywhere from he takes Gasol's 20 minutes to he could play 34 minutes a game. I really have no insight. They don't seem to like Montrezl Harrell that much. So I think just play him in FanDuel, because as Adam's saying, he doesn't need to play that much to pay it off. And then on DraftKings, I'm just a little bit more hesitant to try him out tonight.
All right. John says, does Awesemo Plus provide an instant random good NBA lineups? Not sure what that means, but I think I know what you mean. Or just all the tools and have to work on it. Thanks. Well, all of the tools, but also the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, you can crunch lineups as well. So in a sense, yes. Wouldn't go as far to say as they're random, but yes, you can generate lineups. For sure. Chicago and Phoenix will close it out here. Alex, Zach LaVine and Kobe White questionable. Billy Donovan, though, said not great, referring to LaVine's ankle. So I was actually hoping we might get news earlier in the day. Doesn't appear that'll be the case. If I'm guessing, I don't think he plays. But at the same time, I have a very tough time listening to coach speak and taking them at their word, because it's bitten me way too many times in the past.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware of this one.
Yeah, I mean, I can go to you first, Adam, if you want to go ahead. And
so this game is really, really interesting, because you have LaVine and you have Kobe White, both questionable, and Garrett Temple doubtful. White didn't practice yesterday. LaVine didn't practice yesterday. And, like you said, Donovan said it didn't look good. Even beyond the coach speak, though, the fact that LaVine, didn't step on the floor in practice, I don't think bodes very well. So it has the potential here they could be down 3 of their main rotation pieces and 2 of their primary ball handlers. Like, you could get a ton of minutes potentially for Tomas Satoransky. You could get a bunch of minutes for some combination of Ryan Arcidiacono and or Troy Brown if both White and LaVine are out, and obviously increased usage for everyone playing. So it's a really difficult situation to handle if we don't have that news, I think, because obviously you don't want to it's risky to just plug in Troy Brown and then everybody plays and Troy Brown's useless. But you also, potentially get a really, really big advantage if the news breaks your way. So it's something, I know Alex talks about, maybe just leaving a couple of roster spots open so that you can move guys around. But, I do think there's the potential for Chicago to open up a lot of value at some point after lock tonight.
All right. Alex, you good on this?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I thought you said LeVert for some reason. So I was like, what is going on here? But LaVine.
Maybe I did. I'm not sure.
Oh, it's all good. So I think this one is really tricky because Chicago and Phoenix both look like pretty bad values if LaVine does play. So there is a lot of risk for saving these roster spots because I don't feel like these 9 p.m. games have very much going for them. So what you could do is boost the projections of guys in these games a little bit when you're making your lineups. But you're pretty much nuking your whole lineup if you have 3 or 4 guys from this set of games. So I'm not sure I'm willing to take that risk, but from what you guys are saying, it sounds like there's a pretty good chance that LaVine doesn't play.
It does feel like it. And we'll close it out with this. Do you guys have any interest in Phoenix?
I think Phoenix, they don't really stand out tonight. I mean, they're fully healthy. Chris Paul and Devin Booker seem to take away from each other's production. So I'm not really super interested. What
about you, Adam, to close this one out?
Yeah, not too interested. I think DeAndre Ayton's probably the easiest guy to get to. Just another center that plays around 30 minutes is in that mid-range salary or mid-salary range and averages over a fantasy point per minute. One thing I did want to mention from Chicago, in addition to Satoransky, I think being a viable option regardless of who's healthy, he's someone I think you can play and then potentially just gets even better if LaVine and White are out. But Patrick Williams is 3,600 on FanDuel. He's played at least 30 minutes in 4 out of his last 5. He's not a great fantasy producer, but he shouldn't be minimum salary playing 30 minutes a game.
All right. Hey, that'll do it for us. And by the way, thanks for getting us well above that 500 number. I didn't even have to ask towards the end. It makes me feel good. Subscribe to the channel too. And if you want to join the Awesemo community here, hit that join button, get access to some cool stuff. And remember, $9 for 9 days using the promo code starting9 at awesemo.com/promos. It gets you a 9 days of Awesemo plus MLB content with the season starting tomorrow. Josh Engleman, Greg Ehrenberg coming up next with Live Before Lock. Thanks for tuning in. All right, boys.
See you guys later.
What up, boys?
What's going on?
Nada. Trying to figure out this ridiculous slate.
Well, if it makes you feel better, whatever opinions you have now won't matter in 30 minutes.
That doesn't make me feel better. Not even close. I kind of like this slate, oddly enough. I just don't appear to be on the same things as the public in a pretty aggressive manner, and that rarely feels good until it does.
Yeah.
Born ready. And we are live. Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. It is Wednesday, March 31st. We're going to be in April tomorrow. I said it so much this morning that I honestly forgot that the day hadn't changed and it was still March. But I do too much content in a given day. I mean, not to me personally, but probably to you guys. Anyway, I'm Josh Engleman. I'm joined by Greg Ehrenberg. We are brought to you by SuperDraft, and we will certainly be touching on them a little bit later on in the show. But we got to start here. Greg, how are you?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, EMAC 2024, but also, I mean, who even knew that there was 31 days in March? Like that's a surprise to many people.
Yeah, not me, man. I didn't know today because I woke up thinking it was April, and that's not a joke. But we'll deal with it. We've got a ton to talk about right now, so please hit the like button. I don't have to yell and scream at Laffy. It looks like he did a pretty good job on the last run. So hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, notification bell, all that good stuff. Whew, we got a big one here. It's been a while since we've seen, I feel like it's been a while at least since we've seen heavy chalk plays on a big slate. And Donovan Mitchell is sort of causing that chaos. We have Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley, some of these Utah guys picking up a ton of love. I think we should start on the guard side, work our way through it.
Well, we just got news, by the way, which I was going to say too. We've very consistently, as of late, every time I'm about to do a show, we get news about a minute before it starts. Like, I can't believe we didn't get news a minute before the show starts, but it's because we got news a minute after the show starts. So John Wall officially out today. He was questionable due to a knee injury. The Rockets starting lineup: Kevin Porter Jr., Sterling Brown, Daniel House, Jay Sean Tate, and Christian Wood. So there we go. Now we could already change things, and something to start with as well.
Well, never mind. Blah, 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 blah. This is where we should start. Whatever. The run sheet gets tossed in the garbage at 6:06. Let's walk through what we think this impact is to John Wall being out for the Rockets. And I think this is the first place we need to start. We know now that the starting lineup has Porter Jr. essentially being the nominal point guard, although if you want to call it Sterling Brown too, I think that's pretty close either direction. I sort of wouldn't have been surprised if we saw DJ Augustine there. I'm kind of glad that we got the starting lineup immediately because I probably would have been projecting DJ Augustine for 28 minutes. And now I don't think that that's going to really be the case. Or do you?
No, I don't think he's going to play 28 minutes. I'm just checking really quick what the price point is on Kevin Porter Jr. Like, he's played so well in this role so far this year.
Yeah.
Kevin Porter Jr. 5,500 on FanDuel. On DraftKings, Kevin Porter Jr. is 6,000. I mean, Kevin Porter Jr. in starts this year, he has played very, very well. A matchup against the Nets, which, I mean, there's definitely blowout risk for sure. But, I mean, as a starter this year, 6 starts, 35 minutes per game, 36 fantasy points, 36 DraftKings points, that is, for Kevin Porter Jr. as a starter. He was somebody who is, way more expensive than this not too recently when he was a starter for them. So, I mean, it's going to be pretty difficult for me to get away from Kevin Porter Jr. And I'm very interested to see where his ownership ends up.
Yeah, so I'm going to give, just on my first look, I'm going to work my way through this entire process so we could talk through it because I think it's really important for a team like Houston. Over the 5 games that DJ Augustine has been a part of this team, the most minutes that he has played is 24. And I feel pretty comfortable just putting that in right now at 24, removing 30 plus minutes from a point guard. And with Mason Jones no longer there, being shipped out to Philly, shout out to Daryl Morey for that one. 24 feels pretty safe. The real big question to me then is going to be what happens to Sterling Brown's minutes. Before Kevin Porter came back, when he had missed 3 straight, Sterling Brown played 28, 34, and 36 minutes. If we just use that same analog of Wall out equals increased minutes for Sterling Brown, I mean, I'm feeling like something in the neighborhood of 32 is pretty realistic for him today.
Well, Avery Bradley's in the mix too, and he hasn't been in the mix in the past. So that's somebody else who's going to take up some minutes. So Avery Bradley played, I want to say 17 minutes last game. I'm bringing up
14.7. I had already given him 16 minutes even prior to this news, and I can't imagine Avery Bradley is prepped and ready to be playing significantly more than that after basically not playing this year.
No, but I'm just saying that in terms of Sterling Brown, if it's hard to just assume that he's going to play those same minutes from the past when there is Avery Bradley in the mix who wasn't before. So just kind of bring that up as a point of reference.
I don't think that this changes anything at the center spot. I still think we see some sort of split for Christian Wood and Kelly Olynyk. Do you see any scenario where those two guys play alongside of each other?
Yes. But for a couple of reasons. Number one, this team is terrible. Christian Wood has played very well when he's been on the court for them. He's been one of their better players. And Kelly Olynyk's played really well recently also. So the Houston Rockets, a team that, I mean, what are they even playing for at this point? Like, why not throw Christian Wood and Kelly Olynyk out there just to kind of see what it looks like? So I don't think they overlap a ton, but if we saw something like 32 minutes for Christian Wood, 22 for Kelly Olynyk, that wouldn't be surprising, where we get, 4 to 6 minutes of overlap.
All right, I'm going to run through what I have as my thoughts right now for minutes. I went Kevin Porter 34, Christian Wood 30, Sterling Brown 30, Jayshawn Tate 32, DJ Augustine 24, Daniel House 28, and then Martin at 16, Olynyk at 18, Avery Bradley 16, DJ Wilson at 12.
DJ Wilson, let's see, has he been playing recently?
Every single game.
And what has his minutes been? He's played
about 12.
Yeah, 12, 17, 12, 18. So yeah, I think it's reasonable to keep him the same. I don't think there's anything you said that's really wrong. I would like to give Christian Wood a little bit more playing time, just because I think that he could overlap with Kelly Olynyk and they play more big lineups. And I just want to make sure I have a little bit of exposure to Christian Wood in my lineups without John Wall there, because I do think that there is pretty substantial upside for him. So,
yeah.
I mean, not that it makes a massive difference when looking at the minutes, but I'm more inclined to give Christian Wood 32 minutes just so I get him a little bit more in my lineups. I don't know if I'd get to him if I have him at 30.
I should be getting to him either way, just based on what I'm seeing. I've got him at 1.25 fantasy points per minute for this game. Just, that's what happens when you get to face Brooklyn. But Kevin Porter Jr., 5,500 on FanDuel, 6K on DraftKings. That particularly on FanDuel, he has just become, I would imagine, incredibly popular. Here's a question for you. And I think it's a good one, but we'll see. Kevin Porter Jr. or Jordan Clarkson for you today?
Let's see. That's probably going to be Kevin Porter Jr. actually.
Yeah, and it is for me as well.
And I think Jordan Clarkson's still a really strong play. I think on FanDuel, that's probably the optimal. By the way, Kevin Porter Jr., I didn't even think, what position is he on FanDuel? Is he a shooting guard?
A clue. I won't see it till I see it.
He's a small forward on FanDuel, so it doesn't matter.
Okay.
At least in terms of comparing them on FanDuel. On DraftKings, Kevin Porter Jr. is a point guard / shooting guard. So maybe that's one where it's a little more relevant, people comparing them. But yeah, it's going to be Kevin Porter Jr. for me. Clarkson, still a really strong play. But this is actually probably something that's going to bring down my exposure to him a little bit, just because we do have Kevin Porter Jr. In the same price range on DraftKings. Obviously, FanDuel is different because of different positions. But this is going to bring down my exposure to Clarkson a little bit on DraftKings. For cash games, though, I still think you want to roster both of them.
Yeah, I have them very, very close to each other on DK, with Porter coming in about $500 more expensive. Whew, this is a fun one. And I still prefer Mike Conley at 5,800 to both of those guys on DK, but that's neither here nor there. That's some pretty big news.
Yeah, it was news. I thought there was a good chance we would get it. I just didn't think it was. Maybe I should have, because that's just been the trend lately. I didn't expect it to happen as soon as the show started.
Okay, so now that we've got that Houston news out of the way, I think that we can go back to what was at least a generic topic that I was looking to hit. What are your thoughts on some of the more higher owned guards for this slate, whether that's FanDuel or DraftKings? Is there anybody you see that you fully agree with the ownership, guys that you want to be significantly under the field on? Where are you going at guard today?
All right, let me bring this up really quick, the ownership now. Have we gotten an ownership update with the Rockets news?
There's no way.
Let's see.
It's my guess.
Let's see. Oh, we did 20 seconds ago.
Fair enough. Look at me. Look, the people behind the scenes here are fantastic, everybody. They do their job better than anybody else in this industry.
All right. So Jordan Clarkson now coming in at 46% on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's projecting for 55% ownership, the most popular play on the slate. Like I said, I think he's a very, very strong play, and definitely somebody to get a lot of exposure to on DraftKings. But now we're seeing that Kevin Porter Jr., 20% projected ownership compared to 46 for Clarkson. I'm much more inclined to get to Kevin Porter Jr. at those kind of numbers.
Likewise, we are in the exact same page there. I do want to hit on the two super chats that I saw. One from Caleb Arthur that said, how many Jazz is the right number? I never really know how to answer these questions. Somewhere between 0 and 4.
Also, I mean, like, are we talking cash? Are we talking GPP? Are we talking FanDuel? Are we talking DraftKings? Because I'll say this, at least for cash games on both sides, I think you absolutely want to roster Mike Conley and Jordan Clarkson.
Yep.
I also think both of them are really strong GPP plays, but there is no exact number that you have to have. I will say in cash games, play Jordan Clarkson and Mike Conley.
Yeah, that I completely agree with. That's really the only way that I think that you can answer those questions, because in a GPP, you can sort of make anything work depending on what the rest of the pieces are. In cash games specifically, though, those two guys have to be in, and it wouldn't shock me at all if there's a third in a lineup that is pretty close to the optimal. The other super chat that we have, which came from Brandon Wagner, said, not playing today, but just wanted to say what's up and thank you guys. Didn't win, but had a nice cash last night. I'll be back in the mix. See you guys tomorrow. Thanks, man. Happy to have you here. I know you're not playing tonight, but see you tomorrow, I guess.
Yeah, he tagged us on Twitter last night. He had a really nice stat correction in his favor where he tweeted out a win he was all excited about, and then he got a stat correction that gave him like an extra like $1,500 in winnings like 30 seconds later. So yeah, congratulations, man. That's a nice night.
I would give anything for a stat correction that went in my favor. I'm not sure I'm familiar with those things.
They happen from time to time. Like, I mean, every once in a while, you're going to get a bad win.
I'll take every bad win somebody wants to give me. That much I could tell you. All right, let's keep this one moving now. Other guards that are picking up some ownership today. Anybody standing out to you on the list? Because it's kind of a weird one. We have no Kyle Lowry now, so Fred VanVleet is at the top of the heap in ownership, or at least pretty close to the top of the heap. If you want to count Diallo or Ingles as guards, we got Svi Mykhailiuk picking up some ownership. What are you looking at the guard spot tonight?
Yeah, so the Svi one is really interesting to me on DraftKings because Ty Jerome is questionable to play. And if Ty Jerome ends up getting ruled out, like it's impossible to not give guys like Svi and Kenrich Williams, not a guard, except I think that he belongs in this conversation while we're talking about Svi and the injury situation, because Ty Jerome has been playing. He played 29 minutes last game. He's been playing, mid-20s minutes as of late. If he's out, like the Thunder always have so many guys that are listed out. SGA's out. Who knows when he's coming back? Darius Bazley, he's been out for forever. Lou Dort is out. Pokashevsky is out. So if we're going to say Ty Jerome is out too, it's really difficult to not expect big minutes to go to guys like Kenrich Williams and Svi. Maybe even Theo Maledon becomes viable in that scenario. Somebody who I'm not really thinking about too much now, but is somebody who I think would become a pretty core piece of my builds if there's no Ty Jerome. So I still think it's up in the air with Svi, but I think almost certainly if Ty Jerome's out, I'm going to be above that number on him.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to flip the question for you now. Who are you looking at that isn't picking up as much ownership as you were personally expecting? Who are you going over the field on?
All right, so I just reran my DraftKings lineups for the news with the Rockets, and let's see if there are any like really off the wall plays I'm getting to. There's not really anybody too crazy at guard. Let's see where the dust settle at. Gary Trent looks a little high to me, actually. I thought maybe he would be lower. I don't think there's anybody like super bizarre I'm onto. I feel like it's different for you based on what we were talking about before. Like, I think there's a lot of reasonable chalk plays. Like, I think the Jazz guys make sense. I think Kevin Porter Jr. makes sense now. The Raptors plays, I think all of them, like Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, they're all strong plays for me with Kyle Lowry out. So who are the guys that you were alluding to before we started that you are on in a big way that the field isn't?
What's really funny is that wasn't me alluding to anything. That wasn't even in my head. That was just the way that I was delivering this information to you. But now that you're asking, it's not like I don't have them. Prior to the Houston news, which is obviously going to change everything, but I had a full dummy crunch ready to go and ready to talk about. So it went right in the dumpster immediately. I feel like I recommend him a lot, but I'm kind of okay with it. We had De'Aaron Fox projected for 2% ownership on FanDuel, where he's 10K. Now, there is some sticker shock on that number, but he has been playing out of his mind, and I don't really mind getting to De'Aaron Fox at 2% ownership if Luka's going to be at 18, and if we're going to see, James Harden at the shooting guard spot be 27. I'm not saying that these guys are comparable, but I don't think that he should be 2 when those guys are 14 times as owned, basically. Similarly, Dame, I think at 8%, 9,100 on FanDuel, another guard that I'm looking at a little bit more than the public ownership is really showing. Doesn't make we're talking about a 10-game slate here, and we are seeing a little bit of concentration in ownership, and I see that as a perfect opportunity to just shimmy a little bit in a different direction. There are chalk plays today that I think should absolutely be chalk, like Pascal Siakam at the power forward spot. Some of the centers that are picking up ownership are the only guys that I think should be picking up ownership. Fred VanVleet, I think, transcends his ownership. Those are guys that I'm not really having much of a problem getting away from, but there are other guards that I think have pretty close to comparable upsides that are picking up no ownership today. Marcus Smart at 5,500, 3% ownership. Like, I'm just going to take a swing that he has one of his Marcus Smart games.
Do you want to do let's do the Harden conversation now. It's way different to me on FanDuel and DraftKings now.
Yeah.
DraftKings, I like James Harden a lot more than FanDuel, but looking at FanDuel with all of the options we have available at shooting guard now, James Harden's 30% owned. It's not to say I don't think he should be in the player pool, but I wouldn't play Harden at a higher clip than what his ownership is, especially like Fred VanVleet at 7,400. That's a crazy good play. We get to cheaper guys like Joe Ingles at 5,500. That's a really strong play. Jordan Clarkson, Jordan Clarkson's a point guard eligible, but I mean, still, I think there's a bunch of guys at shooting guard that are in play. And with Harden's price up to 11.5 and Kyrie Irving back, I'm not saying to fade James Harden, but I think that his ownership is a little bit too high, at least on FanDuel. DraftKings, I think it's fairly easy to get to him, but I feel a little bit differently with him on FanDuel.
Well, in my play more, play less tweet that went out a bit ago, I had James Harden in the play less category on both FanDuel and DraftKings. And mostly it was an ownership thing. His ownership was north of 30% when I put that tweet out. It did come down. He was in the mid 20s in FanDuel recently. I am still going to be what looks like incredibly light on James Harden tonight. And it's not to say that I don't like it. And I'm certainly not comfortable in that number whatsoever. It's not fun to fade the guy that's been nuking fantasy slates as of late. I just think that it's easier to redistribute to some of the other guys that are potential pay up options. There's enough value in mid-tier guys at shooting guard that I think that works. I actually really like Jimmy Butler at 9K today at the small forward spot. Paying up for Siakam or Randall, or just going to someone like Giannis or Luka. I already mentioned Dame and De'Aaron Fox. That's a spot that I think is pretty easy to get away from. I have Harden in the optimal lineup about 12% of the time. That's kind of half his ownership. So that's just naturally pulling him down a bit. It's a big slate. He's going to have to go pretty big, and Houston's going to have to keep this one close for him to, I think, truly crush me. Because I think it's pretty safe to say, James Harden's probably going to be in that 50 to 60 fantasy point range without very much effort. But can Luka do that same thing? Can Dame do that same thing? Giannis? Eventually you're just paying up for too many different guys. So I am taking a bit of a discount on James Harden's ownership today, and I will not have a good time sweating that one until it's over.
So yeah, I agree with you. FanDuel, my build, I'm a little bit underweight to him. On DraftKings, though, I'm almost exactly even at this point. The other thing too is, I mean, there's so much more flexibility. It's easier to fit guys into different positions. So it's not a thing like FanDuel where we can only roster 2 shooting guards. There's a lot of guys who are point guard, shooting guard eligible. You can throw them in the guard spot, throw them in the utility spot. So Harden, I found a little easier to get to on DraftKings. And then Giannis is another pay up option who I'm really high on today. So those are the 2 guys right now that I'm paying up for the most, are Harden and Giannis. But I mean, with Harden where his ownership is, I'm just not that much different than the field.
Yeah, that's we're on the same page. On DraftKings in particular, position basically is meaningless, generally speaking, unless you're center eligible only. You can get in to a spot in multiple different spots, and you could really move those numbers around. It does kind of make pay up options on DraftKings end up looking really similar, generally speaking, just because of the flexibility that you have. Is there anything else you want to touch on for the guards? We've already been live for 23 minutes.
Yeah, hey, it goes fast sometimes. Hamidou Diallo is another one that I think is really interesting from a standpoint of there is so much playing time and usage up for grabs in Detroit. And Diallo, really his first game with the team where he got extended minutes last game, Diallo played really well. He ended up, even though he came off the bench, he still played 27 and a half minutes. He had a 24% usage rate. He scored 43 DraftKings points in those minutes. It was a game against Toronto, which I don't even know what to make of Toronto, if that's an easier difficult
Ty Jerome ruled out.
All right. Well, I'll finish my quick thoughts here on Hamidou Diallo. Yeah. This is good. That's actually Ty Jerome, a name that doesn't seem important, but kind of is really important for this slate because I'm just going to get into a bunch of Svi and Kenrich Williams. I'm pretty sure just based on how I was thinking about it earlier. But there's not that many guys that are active for the Thunder. But Hamidou Diallo, anyway, was another guy who was popping up at a pretty high number for me, at least before this news.
Okay, I have to hit a couple plugs right now before I do anything. So once again, guys, if you can, hit that like button. It helps us out a ton. We've got 2 more shows coming up for the rest of today. The first of which is immediately after this show, or at least close to immediately after this. PGA Live Before Lock. Ben Raza and Eric are breaking down this week's Valero Texas Open. We're mixing it up a little bit. Rosalind's on the Tuesday show now. Eric's sneaking in the Live Before Lock. We're mixing things up. And then late Live Before Lock tonight at 9, you will be back with Spags, taking everybody up until the late slate lock from 9 to 10. We've got free content today. NBA player rankings are free. NHL player rankings are free. And when you're watching that PGA show tonight, the PGA Top Golfers tool, also free. Whew, tons of stuff going on right now. We also have a giveaway going on. If you want to head to the @Awesemo MLB handle, all you have to do is predict which pitcher is going to have the most strikeouts on opening day. You could win a free year of Awesemo Plus. You just have to like and follow the Awesemo MLB account and the Awesemo_com account to be eligible. Go check out the pinned tweet. The instructions will be there. All right, let's walk through this Oklahoma City team, who is a bit thin on bodies today. Grayson Allen also ruled out. The trickle down is real, man. This one's going to start getting weird. Let's knock out Oklahoma City first, and then we'll slide on over and pick up whatever we need to do for Memphis, which I assume is going to end up being Desmond Bain starting. So really excited to go down that journey. All right, Ty Jerome out. Svi Mykhailiuk, 32 minutes. I mean,
by the way, we have a starting lineup for them also.
Go for it. Hit me.
The starting lineup is Teo Maledon, Svi Mykhailiuk, Kenrich Williams, Isaiah Roby, and Moses Brown.
Okay. So Maledon, I think, plays, 34 minutes. I think Svi at this point is playing 34 minutes if they have to. I think that Kenrich Williams is probably in for something like 32 at this point. I already had Roby playing a ton, and
Maledon could play more. He played 37 2 games ago.
I don't want to get to more Maledon. How many guys do they have active? Maledon, Brown, Roby, Mykhailiuk, Tony Bradley, Kenrich Williams, Darius Miller, Josh Hall, Justin Jackson. So 9.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, 9.
Okay.
Not very many. And what is Tony Bradley's price point? Are they just going to play a bunch of gigantic lineups? Like, what happens if Isaiah Roby or Moses Brown gets into foul trouble? Is this going to be a game where what was Tony Bradley's ownership?
So I think it only matters if Moses Brown really gets into foul. If Isaiah Roby gets into foul trouble, Kenrich Williams or something just plays the 4, or they dust off Darius Miller from the end of the bench for like 8 or 10 minutes. I think the bigger one is when the centers start going. I almost wish that I could, or not that I can't, but I kind of want to project Tony Bradley for slightly more minutes as if they're going to play alongside of each other, just to potentially get to him. Like, I don't think giving Darius Miller's 8 minutes is all that important. But if Moses Brown gets in any foul trouble, I think Tony Bradley immediately just has to play significantly more, given how shorthanded they are. But I don't want to have it set up that I don't actually get to both of those guys.
So I was, when we were talking about guards before, I was saying like, well, I don't really have any guard takes, but I kind of have big man takes because I was already somewhat interested in Tony Bradley just because he wasn't picking up any ownership. There's some ownership going to Isaiah Roby and Moses Brown. And this is something we've seen from Thunder this year. Is they have like, I've been really impressed with Moses Brown so far this year, but we've seen a number of guys. There's been a chalk Thunder big man who goes out and starts. Like Moses Brown could get in foul trouble. Isaiah Roby could get in foul trouble. Both of them could get in foul trouble. We've seen Roby get into foul trouble as a chalk play like a million times this season. And there's been times where it's been whoever the backup is comes in at fairly low ownership and has a good game. So just for that, and because we've seen the situation play out before, I think that Tony Bradley makes for a pretty good leverage play in GPPs, more so on DraftKings than FanDuel though.
All right, I'm going to say something out loud that I probably shouldn't, but I'm going to ask this question anyway.
Don't get yourself canceled.
No, not that kind of comment. Is Svi Mykhailiuk the best play on the slate now?
He's 3,700 on FanDuel and 4,200 on DraftKings. So I might just be asking that question about from a FanDuel perspective more so, but you can go either direction if you really want to.
I think he's a really good play. I wouldn't call him the best play on the slate, though. To me, that's Kevin Porter Jr.
I would rather have Svi Mikhailiuk over Kevin Porter Jr. on both sites.
I would rather have Kevin. Well, let me rerun my lineups and then see what I say. My feeling is I'd rather have Kevin Porter Jr. though.
And just so we're clear here, no part of that makes me happy to say. Like it's not a good thing. I'm really uncomfortable with it. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Anyway, we need to also head on over to Memphis. Did we get a Memphis starting lineup after the news of Grayson Allen? Doesn't appear that we did.
No, not that I see anywhere online.
So we had Grayson Allen missing a couple games, which is now a shockingly long time ago. Desmond Bane, we'll say in the last 4 games that Grayson Allen missed, because it's basically the same rotations clear across the board. Bane played 19, 31, 17, and 23. So that's a blast. I'm going to give that dude 24 minutes. Fun. DeAnthony Melton in that exact same stretch played 18, 23, 18, and 15. I already had him at 20 minutes, so I don't really know what I could possibly do there. Dylan Brooks got to 32 minutes pretty regularly, so he is now officially going to get 32 minutes for me. Who is the actual guy picking up these minutes? Now, we know we don't have Justice Winslow, so that is another piece. Tillman made his way back into the rotation previously. Tyus Jones's minutes don't ever move. Who's going to get the biggest bump here?
It's not going to be a bump that I think is significant for DFS purposes, but probably John Conchar. I don't think that he is going to be I don't think he's going to be DFS relevant at all, except I think he's somebody who probably goes from out of the rotation now playing, 12 minutes. So just if we're talking about a literal interpretation of the question, I think Conchar could go from out of the rotation to being a small part of the rotation.
So do you see Desmond Bane, DeAnthony Melton, either of those two guys as viable today now?
No, I don't. One of the other big issues with Melton is, and this is one of the other reasons that makes it hard to really give him big minutes, he doesn't really fit playing alongside Ja Morant. Like, I like Melton as a player, but it's really wonky to have the two of them together because neither of them really shoot well. Melton's fairly ball dominant himself. So they don't really play those two guys together all that much. That's what makes it really hard to ever project Melton to play, 28 minutes or anything like that. So I don't really think this does anything for me in terms of value on Memphis.
Yeah, I think you and I are on the same page there. I feel like we're going to regret that. Like Bane or Melton could be the guy that actually falls into these minutes. And honestly, it's the Memphis Grizzlies. Like, would you actually be shocked if Desmond Bane played 28 minutes today? I can't imagine you would be. And he might still be bad because he's bad, but it's a tricky spot. I'm kind of with you, whether or not it's Conchar or Sean McDermott, or I don't even know who's truly active for this team. I don't think that extra guy that's getting the minutes is relevant.
By the way, just running my lineups, an uncomfortable amount of Kenrich Williams is popping up. I
already had it. So in that pre-show crunch that I was talking about, he was my second most exposed small forward, 40+% at 13% ownership. I was already heading down that lonely road.
Yeah, well, I'm right there with you, so it's not too lonely.
Cool. That'll work. I am about to start running my crunches now as well. We're at 633, the midway point. I was going to try to get you to forwards. So talk to me a little bit about the most owned forwards on this slate. How do you feel about the chalk at the forward position? Anybody you really like, regardless of ownership? Anybody you're trying to get under the field on?
All right, let me give this a refresh and see if we have new news for the random Thunder guys that are all of a sudden just super popular, at least in terms of my build. So, it looks like we do have an ownership projection that came out 2 minutes ago, and that is refreshing on my computer. And then I'll have the most recent numbers in front of me. So first off, let's see. Kenrich Williams coming at 23% on DraftKings. Too low, according to me. Kenrich Williams on FanDuel, 23% on FanDuel. Was he 23% on both sites, or did I look at that wrong? Yeah, 23% on both sites. Too low per me on both sites. I like Kenrich Williams a lot now. We just talked about how thin the Thunder are. Kenrich Williams is going to be starting for them. Kenrich Williams chalk has already failed me multiple times, but no reason for me to not want to go back to it. When I just look at the outlook of this team right now, not only do they have all these minutes available, but where the hell is the usage going? Like there is no high usage guys. Somebody's going to take a bunch of shots for them, and it could be Kenrich Williams. At least I hope it is, according to the way that I have sussed out my players here. But I mean, Kenrich Williams, Fima Haluk, Teo Maledon, like these guys are going to have to shoot, because I think I don't trust these guys to be able to get the ball to players like Isaiah Roby and Moses Brown. So I think that the tree of those guys could carry a fairly significant usage rate.
I have a lot of randomness on right now, but the first lineup that got generated had Svi, Justin Jackson, and Josh Hall. So I feel like I'm doing something wrong. Because whatever that is, that's not the answer today.
It could be
quite sure of it. Well, some of those guys aren't going to actually be in my final crunch. Like they're just not going to be available. I have a feeling that one of these Memphis guys are going to break me tonight. I don't know who it's going to be, but I just have a feeling that I am going to regret not having them.
So here's the pushback on that. Like we've seen from Memphis this year, they play such a deep rotation, and Ja Morant plays, 33, 34 minutes. Jonas Valanciunas usually plays somewhere in the neighborhood of like the highest 20 minutes. Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's less. Other than that, they just play a bunch of guys 24 to 26 minutes, and none of them have significant upside. There's now so much value available to us on this slate. I don't want a chance with the Memphis guys, and I don't disagree with you that one of them could have upside, but I just think it's such a crapshoot picking which guy it is. And I have other guys I'm really confident in, like Svi and Kenrich Williams. So,
I didn't want it to sound like I'm going to try to get to those guys. I'm just fully expecting one of those Memphis guys to end up being like a really essential piece tonight, and I'm not going to get there because I don't know who it's going to be.
Gotcha.
We got a ton of super chats since we last addressed them. Caleb came back with a second one. Is Clarkson, Conley, and Ingles in the same team too much? That's basically the exact same question as before. No, it's not.
No,
but maybe it is. I don't know. Like, it was fine before. It's still fine now.
Although, also, I'm kind of scary low on Ingles on DraftKings now, just because so many guys are coming out ahead of him for me now. Like, I loved Ingles early in the day. I still definitely like Ingles as a points per dollar play, but other guys are becoming higher priorities for me now.
Anthony Davis with the super chat. Fellas, with Wall out along with House, House isn't out.
House is starting.
Yeah. So do we not like, ultimately, I think he thinks that House is out and that Kenyon Martin Jr. would get more minutes, but House isn't out. So Anthony Davis, I think you read that one wrong. Jordan Reeves just sent us a super chat with no question. Fun. Ruben Mitchell, thoughts on Derek White pivot off of Conley?
Let's see.
Depends what you're trying to do there. Like they're not even comparable as plays today.
Yeah, and then it's what site is he talking about
no idea.
Too? Because I'll assume it's a FanDuel question because they're in the same price range. If you want to pivot off of Mike Conley, by the way, I think that Conley is still the best play, but maybe you have Conley, Ingles, Clarkson all in the same line. If you say, I don't want all three of these Jazz ball dominant players, I think that would be reasonable to say you want to move off Conley. I wouldn't go to Derek White though. I would go to, in that same price range, probably for me now, Hamidou Diallo. I don't think he's going to pick up really any ownership. I think there's upside there just because he played so well in the last game with the Pistons, and maybe they opt to give him more minutes. Conley's definitely my preferred play in that price range, but if you are looking for a pivot, I'd rather go to Diallo than Derek White.
I'd rather go to Maledon if that's a FanDuel question now, given everybody that's out.
Yeah, I mean, he's $900 cheaper, so then it becomes a question of what you do with the rest of the salary. But yeah, Maledon is definitely a strong play now.
Sabonis or Randall on FanDuel? That's another super chat question from Chris Thomason.
That is Randall for me pretty comfortably. I have concerns going forward. It's something I've said a bunch recently is Sabonis moving forward. Karis LeVert is playing well for the Pacers. He's taking up a bunch of usage, and Sabonis played well last game, but his FanDuel point totals the game before that, 44, 36, 46, 36, 36. I have some pretty significant concerns about the upside of Sabonis in the starting lineup now that's pretty loaded.
One final question, DraftKings. Svi versus Sabin Lee on DK. Sabin Lee is a much better player.
What's the question?
Who would you rather play on DraftKings, Fee or Saban Lee? I don't think this is close.
Yeah, so Saban Lee, he played really well as a chalk play last game, but it was a play that really shouldn't have worked out. I mean, he played 26 minutes and then just scored well over a fantasy point per minute. For the season, Saban Lee plays 15 minutes per game. He scores 14 fantasy points. If you're going to give Saban Lee even 26 minutes, I don't even think he's guaranteed to play those 26 minutes again. But if he does, he's not a good enough fantasy producer to be a guy who's like, oh my God, mid 20s minutes for Saban Lee, he's going to score 30 plus fantasy points every game. That's not the expectation. If Saban Lee's going to play mid 20s minutes, he's going to score low 20s fantasy points, and that's not good on the slate.
Yeah, I mentioned like you can make a case that Fee is now the best play on the slate, just given the opportunities that the Thunder actually have today. I have them separated by like 60 ranked points. So, Svi somewhere in that top 5-ish as a play, and Saban Lee somewhere in the 60s. So to me, they are not even. I'd be more likely to not have Saban Lee, which is kind of wild. One last super chat. Back from Jordan Reeves again, who I assume tried to do this the first time and has now sent 2 super chats. So shout out to Jordan Reeves for that one. FanDuel Cash, who do you like more, Robert Williams or Andre Drummond? I think it's got to be Robert. Ooh, I think it has to be Robert Williams.
But let me check what the ownership is. All right, Williams.
Drummond was pulling more ownership, but I don't know what they're doing. And like Robert Williams is just going to be the center no matter what.
Yeah, I'm more inclined to go with Drummond, but also it depends what you're going to do with that leftover salary. Like they're in way different price ranges, right? So I have Robert Williams projected for more fantasy points, but there's $1,100 between the two of them. So I'm not leaving $1,100 on the table, but yeah, as a points per dollar play, Drummond is a higher priority for me than Williams is.
Do we need money at this point? Given the amount of value given the amount of value that's come out right now, particularly not at the center spot, I don't see the need to pick up an extra $1,100 to cross my fingers that Drummond is the guy that gets the minutes today. Think about all of the cheap dudes we're playing from the Thunder, from the Jazz, Van Vliet at the top, Siakam at the top. Like this money is not hard to find any longer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know and also what's funny about this is I'm a big Robert Williams guy, and I am not a big Andre Drummond guy at all, like in general. But it's going to be Andre Drummond. Like Drummond is such a good fantasy producer, and it's not like it matters that he's on a new team, right? Like from a fantasy standpoint, Andre Drummond scores a lot of fantasy points per minute for in general for his career.
So does Robert Williams. By the way, Josh Jackson starting tonight for the Pistons. Raise your hand if you saw that one coming.
That's he was like falling out of the rotation.
He literally fell out of the rotation. I mean, what are we doing here?
I don't like Diallo anymore because that's just weird. Like I have to give him less minutes now.
Yeah, 100%. I didn't like Diallo before, but that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. I'm
giving them both 25 minutes and letting it fall where they may, because I don't know who actually closes.
By the way, also that's not, we just talked about not liking Saban Lee.
Yeah.
Now I like Saban Lee less because it's just another guy that has to take minutes.
Yeah. We're on the same page there. I am starting up this crunch quickly just so that I can have something running in the background, but then I need to move on to all sorts of different plugs and such. Do you have any other additional thoughts to the news that Josh Jackson is starting for the Pistons? Like, is that someone you're interested in getting to now?
No, I'm just probably not gonna get like any exposure to anybody on Detroit now. I was getting to Diallo a little bit. I just took away some minutes for him, and I'm gonna rerun my lineups, and I'm gonna assume that means I don't get to that I'm not going to get to Hamidou Diallo now. And then just everybody, it's just so many guys that I think are going to be, it's the bad version of the Memphis Grizzlies. It's a bunch of bad players playing like 24 to 27 minutes.
It certainly is. FanDuel single entry, Conley Wood or Murray Drummond?
Conley Wood.
Yeah, same. Harden Brogdon or Luka Drew Holiday? Luka Drew for me.
Harden, Brogdon, or like Drew Holiday is not somebody I've really thought about today. I don't think I really have any exposure to him.
Brandon
Brandon Clark ruled out.
Oh, great. So now more Memphis stuff. That's Harden Brogdon for me.
Yeah. Well, every question we've already answered is useless at this point. So back to Memphis. All right. Talk everybody through, or at least start coming up with what you want to say about Memphis in this Brandon Clark news, while I say hi to our sponsor. That would be SuperDraft. They've got the 25K jump shot going tonight, 5K to first. And you can get in that one if you use the promo code Awesemo21, AWESEMO21. You can sign up. You can get a free $50 when you deposit $50 or more. You don't have to worry about salaries at SuperDraft. We're talking about multipliers. So Giannis, for example, has a 1.05 multiplier, which means you get an extra 5% of Giannis's fantasy points for the day. Some of the other studs don't have that extra 5% boost, but you see some guys with 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, and you can earn Caesars rewards with every contest you enter. They've partnered up with Caesars Casino, which I think is really interesting. You can download the SuperDraft app in the App Store or play at superdraft.io. That's SuperDraft, no limits, more winning. And finally, I got to hit on this one, the big promo right now, MLB kicking off tomorrow. You can use the promo code STARTING9, STARTING, and the number 9. You can get 9 days of Awesemo Plus MLB for $9 when you use that promo code. That's player projections, ownership projections, top stack tool, lineup builder, Slack. It's great. This offer ends April 9th, but you should get in today or at least tomorrow morning, because baseball is upon us. Again, starting 9, STARTING, the number 9. It's baseball time, everybody. All right, what are we doing now with no Brandon Clark, who I just want to say, I gave a couple extra minutes there, and that became useless.
So I kind of think Jonas Valanciunas now, interesting GPP play. Nobody's going to be on him. I talked about just before how hard it is to predict the minutes for Memphis, and that Jonas Valanciunas, they fluctuate. If Valanciunas now is, I mean, we have to say he's at least more likely to get over 30 minutes. There's still a fairly wide range of outcomes with his minutes, but I think he is more of a ceiling of playing time now. It's not the best matchup in the world going against Utah, obviously, but still, I mean, the spread is pretty close for this game. Utah's favored by 5.5 points, so it's expected to be competitive. Valanciunas is such a good points per minute fantasy producer. I think he's a GPP play to be on, like 5-ish% or so, 5 to 10%. That's going to get you overweight to the field on him.
Are you any more interested in DeAnthony Melton or Desmond Bane now that we have one less full player in their rotation?
No, because I still think it's going to be hard to give Melton a lot of minutes just because we know they don't like to play Morant and Melton together. It's still just going to be like, I think like Sean McDermott maybe enters the rotation. Xavier Tillman probably picks up a couple minutes. So I think
Kelly and Tilly might actually see a little bit of time as well, but neither here nor there. Not playable.
A team that is no issue going to, like a 10-man rotation if need be. But Jonas Valanciunas, I'm going to make sure I get him into a small percentage of lineups.
We are coming up to a really tough time. We've got 13 minutes left before lock. I still don't even have a functional crunch available to me. Things are getting pretty wild here. Are you seeing anything different in the data that you're looking at as you run your crunches?
Well, I've got who's coming up now? Uncomfortably low for me on DraftKings now is James Harden, who we talked about earlier.
Interesting. Then who are you paying up for?
I have a lot of I guess technically I'm paying up for the Raptors guys.
Okay.
It's because even the value plays that we like on the Thunder, like Svi, Kenrich Williams, it's not like these are min price guys, like a lot, they're guys that are in the low to mid 4K range. So it's not like we have unlimited space to pay up for. And then just some of the other plays I like, Kevin Porter Jr., I like him a lot. Mike Conley, also guys that are in the mid range. This is, I'm way heavier in the mid range than I've been on a lot of recent slates.
Steven Silas says he wants Christian Wood and Kelly Olynyk to share the floor tonight. Does that give you any interest in Kelly Olynyk?
Gives me a little more interest in Christian Wood. I mean, I'd said before when I was doing the minutes, I thought there was a chance that Christian Wood and Kelly Olynyk, I wanted to have them overlap I think I had it overlapping by like 4 minutes. I don't really think I need to change that. But yeah, I'm fine. I have Christian Wood in a few lineups. That's going to change. That's not going to change. I'm not going to get to Olynyk. It's not like Olynyk is super cheap or anything.
All right. I am slowly but surely getting to the point where I'm comfortable to run a crunch. I hope. We shall see. More than anything, I just hope that this crunch gets finished in the next 6 minutes so that I actually can put lineups in, because we are a little bit behind the 8 ball right now. Our last ownership update was 6 minutes ago, so I assume that doesn't include Brandon Clark yet. Nope, he's still in. So we're waiting for the Brandon Clark update on the ownership. Chalkiest guys we've got right now on DK: Clarkson, Siakam, Van Vliet, Conley. I don't think that is anything really interesting or new. Clarkson, Van Vliet, KPJ, and Roby on the FanDuel side. We can sort of just take this and open it up to questions at this point. So premium Slack, YouTube chat, get your questions in right now. There's no structure left in this show at this point in time. We just have to let it rip. So any questions you guys have, feel free to drop them in. We didn't touch on centers, so give me your thoughts on center. Obviously, a big Andre Drummond fan today on FanDuel. Not that you shouldn't be, by the way.
Yeah, I think Drummond's a good play on FanDuel. Not so on DraftKings. A lot of people were asking me earlier, what do you make of Drummond? And like, when people don't include what site they're playing on, it's such a different conversation. Like 7,800, there's no reason to consider him on DraftKings. FanDuel, totally different story at 5,200. I have I don't know what to make of the minutes here. I assume that there's some overlap between Andre Drummond and Montrezl Harrell. I didn't think that Drummond was going to start right out of the gate, but obviously he is. I still think Marc Gasol is in the rotation to play a few minutes. I don't think he totally falls out. But yeah, if Drummond and Harrell don't overlap with minutes, then Drummond's going to be a really bad play. But I do think they're going to overlap a little bit.
What's funny is I think that Drummond and Gasol are more likely to play alongside of each other, because at least Marc Gasol can space the floor on offense. I don't really expect either one of those two groups of people to be playing alongside each other all that much. We still have to think about Markieff Morris playing minutes at the 5. My guess is Gasol is just off, and I just don't know what they're going to do to Montrezl Harrell's minutes. Does this go 28-20 and Montrezl Harrell wants to burn everything down? Do they just go 24-24? Who closes? Like, I expect Andre Drummond to get a lot more minutes as we move forward, but he hasn't played in 6 weeks. I have no idea what he's going to be able to do. I think I read a report that he lost like 10, 15 pounds or something. I don't know where that weight came from. I guess maybe just eating all of Cleveland's good food, which is, I don't know what their delicacy is. So nothing, I guess, is my guess. Cincinnati is the place that puts chili on their spaghetti, right?
Well, I mean, my brother used to live in Cleveland, and at least you get a lot of food for very cheap there.
Fantastic. That's good. That's good. Is any of it quality?
Yeah, they've got some like good steak places and stuff there, and it's always empty. Nobody's there. Like I think everything's on the verge of going out of business. But yeah, I mean, they've restaurants. The food tasted good.
Cash game FanDuel question from It's Money TV: OG and Tatum or Giannis and Kenrich? That's
Giannis and Kenrich.
Yep, not close. Kenrich Williams or Bogdanovich at small forward in FanDuel Cash?
Kenrich Williams.
Correct. Saban Lee and Butler or Brogdon and Middleton? If only Brogdon was still on that same team.
Saban Lee and Brogdon, or what was the other combination?
Saban Lee and Butler, Brogdon and Middleton.
Brogdon and Middleton.
$500 salary left. Luka or Fox?
Luka.
Yeah. Joval, Siakam or Bam at center?
That is actually Joval for me right now.
I think so too. Ownership is still not updated, so we're still waiting there. We have 8 minutes to go until we get to lock, which is making me nervous. Still don't have a crunch. FanDuel Cash Center today. I think it's Robert Williams or Andre Drummond, and I think you kind of just flip a coin based on how you personally feel about it. I think they're both really close.
I would save that for your last lineup spot, and then whatever salary you have left over. If you have the money to get up to Robert Williams, play him. If not, then play Andre Drummond.
What do you guys make of Josh Hall on DK? He's popping up a lot. Push him down then.
Yeah, he's. Let's see. He's actually somewhat popular in the last run we did. Yeah, I didn't get to Josh Hall at 15% projected ownership.
I really and truly hate the scrambling that's happening for the types of guys that we're scrambling for. Like,
oh, really? You don't like scrambling for guys who that weren't even supposed to be in rotations at the start of the year?
Oddly, no. It's pretty low priority stuff to me. It does make for like fun slates, but not on 10 gamers. It's just a lot to manage. Keldon Johnson or Bogdanovich, no site given.
I guess Keldon Johnson. I don't really have much of an opinion on either of those guys, though.
Okay. All right. Do we have any updated ownership yet before I click refresh here? 11 minutes ago. We certainly don't. We're going to copy this new one in anyway, just because. Maladon and Barnes or Diallo and Roby. No site given or game type. So do what you will with that question.
Read the names to me one more time.
Maladon and Barnes, Diallo and Roby.
Maladon and Barnes. I once the news came out that Josh Jackson was starting, there's just another guy that has to take up minutes for the Pistons. I just got off any exposure I had to any of them.
Giannis and OG or Porzingis and Jimmy Butler.
Oh, are people allowed to ask questions about good players? Like I didn't know that was a thing that we still did. The Giannis side though.
Did I really not? How is Brandon Clark in this and I took him out? That's about to be a real problem.
Well, you got plenty of time to work it out, so that's okay.
You
figure that out. I'll answer some questions here. All right, we got to both those super chats, so let's see what's in the premium Slack chat. I'll answer some of those questions while Josh tries to figure out why his computer is rebelling against him.
Yeah, this is less than ideal right now.
Better DK GPP play, Svi or DeAnthony Melton? It is Svi for me. We've talked about Melton a lot over the last few minutes, and here's the thing I keep bringing up that makes it really hard for me to get to a lot of Melton. Number one, it's a really tough matchup against the Jazz, but it is hard to give him a lot of minutes when we've seen throughout the entire season they do not like to play Ja Morant and DeAnthony Melton together. I think Melton's a very good quality role player in the NBA, but he's playing with the best player on the team in Ja Morant, who they just don't fit together. The fit doesn't make a lot of sense. That also, Robert Williams just rolled out. All right, Drummond over Williams. I win. Drummond over Williams.
How many games are at 7:00? 2. Blazers, Pistons, Heat, Pacers. I'm just trying to think about how, I don't have anything in. I do have my dummy lineup set on FanDuel for no part of that first game. And I think that I might just go with it right now and not scramble. Because I can't update that. Robert Williams is my second most exposed center right now. There's no way I could run a crunch before that. So one of the perks to having a dummy lineup set with only later games is that I am playing an 8-game slate and I need to hope that Pistons, Blazers, Heat, and Pacers just doesn't have a lot of good stuff in it.
Somebody who I've not thought about at all today. What is the price point on Mo Wagner? Is he going to start for the Celtics now?
He might. I mean, yeah, he might.
But
Grant Williams probably going to get a lot of run at the 5 today, I guess.
Are they going to give Luke Cornett minutes? They're so dumb thin in the they were
Derek,
already thin.
Derek Rose ruled out.
That's not going to matter for me at this point.
I liked him on FanDuel 2 hours ago. All right, I'm going to sit back and relax for these next 3 minutes. If you're doing anything to scramble to fix this, go for it. I can talk through it because I'm not going to make any changes, and I'm just going to deal with it the moment we go off the air.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't even know. By the time that I figure out what I want to do with the Celtics, the 7:00 games are already locked. So there's no real stress for me. Like we said, the game starts at 7:30. Yeah. So I don't have that much exposure to Miami, Indiana, or Portland, Detroit anyway.
I mean, I had a lot of Jimmy Butler before. I need him to suck. I didn't really have much else in this window. I was already underweight to Miami, Portland, Detroit, and Indiana. So now I'm just going to be a little bit less. How many minutes can Taco Fall play, since everybody's going to lose their mind here? Because I think the answer is not a lot.
How many can he play? So if we're talking about what he's physically capable of playing, it's probably 12 minutes. What he's actually going to play is probably going to be closer to 0, though.
Luke Cornett is going to break the slate tonight. Get ready for it, everybody.
Is your first thought which team is Luke Cornett on? Because that's a totally reasonable thought process. Not that I saw that on your face, but I think that was just
I mentioned him like 45 seconds ago. I said, are they going to play Luke Cornett minutes now? I think it's going to be, unless we find out Mo Wagner's starting. I'm probably not going to get to Wagner or Cornett or Grant Williams, because Grant Williams isn't a good fantasy producer.
I don't know what I'm going to do at this point in time, but I am going to do this much: check the box for Boston and the New York Knicks. And this is going to be just awful. I don't even know what I just got sent from. Oh, okay. Whew, thank God. Just got a text from Lofty, and I had no idea what it was about to be. And it was just like, there is a link on your phone. And I was like, oh, please don't show up on my watch. This could be literally anything.
Grant Williams this year, 19 minutes per game, 12 DraftKings points in those minutes.
Yeah, 0.69 fantasy points per minute in my model. You really want to get to Luke Cornett or Mo Wagner if either one of those guys are starting, in that they are better placed than Grant Williams. For the Knicks, with no Derrick Rose, I don't know what Elfrid Payton's price is, but both he and Emmanuel Quickley at least look a little bit better. But we'll find out shortly. Taco going to play 30 minutes. Why wouldn't Taco start? I'm going to go ahead and assume that he wouldn't start because he sucks. He's not good.
All right, Taco Fall. By the way, if Taco Fall wasn't tall and a fan favorite, he wouldn't even be in the NBA.
No, he shouldn't be in the NBA anyway. He's not good. He's a waste of a roster spot.
So Taco Fall has played how many minutes this year?
Not important. 7 p.m. We are locked, and you and I both have stuff to do right now, i.e. actually play this slate. Greg, let the people know where you're going to be in 2 hours.
2 hours, I'm going to be doing the late slate live before lock, which, by the way, me and Spags, not only the two of us though, we have special guests today, so that's a little tease. We're gonna have people popping in. This is the last late slate show that we're ever doing. This is the end of an era. Because the other option is like, what are we gonna do? We're gonna have nice producer Jordan Klein work 80 hours a day. Like there's, he can't, like we've got shows. You have a show that starts at 4 a.m. or something like that, something ridiculous. And we got shows, the late slate show going to all hours of the night. So there's only so many hours in the day to do shows. So the late slate show is going to be ending today. So last one, come check that out.
Best of luck to everyone tonight. Hit the like button on your way out the door. Try to figure out what's going on right now. Hop into our premium Slack if you are a premium sub. If you're in YouTube chat, you probably should be in our premium Slack, because this is where the goods are. When everybody gets ruled out at 6:55, we can tell you who to play at 7:30 and after. Cross your fingers, hope for the best. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Good luck.